Welcome everyone to Group B of the GSL. We do have in the bottom left of Royal Blood herO, and in the top right, it is Nightmare. So an old PvP, good old-fashioned PvP. It's not old as in something that has been done many times for a long period of time. It is old as in I think these two players are well, at least 7 years old in the StarCraft 2 scene. So Nightmare, I recall, and most people recall actually, him doing his DT Blink build versus Gumiho back on Cactus Valley. Isn't that a trip? It's a bit of a trip. So he's been around for a long time. herO's been around for even longer. I'm not sure exactly when Nightmare's professional career started in StarCraft 2, especially because it might be difficult to find exactly when you consider him a professional. But obviously herO's been around since Brood War, a somewhat successful Brood War player. Nightmare not having any background in that, I don't believe. Anyways, Brood War hardly matters, especially in PvP, where it is incredibly different, but Protoss as a race is incredibly different. What matters in PvP 2023 StarCraft Korean GSL, to be super specific, is usually a lot of aggression. Usually. herO's actually setting up as if he's going to expand quickly, which I believe that he might, but not exactly skipping on the gas too much. Still has two gas geysers, even though they are not mining totally and completely. Nightmare, seeing that low ground pylon, knows what that means. Didn't actually get back in necessarily to check if a second gateway had been made, but the timing, as I pressed the wrong button, so excuse me, but the timing would suggest that there was no second gateway at the typical time in which you would build a second gateway, because some people do low ground wall, but with the same opener. So that is something to consider, something to worry about, but no. It is very much actually a one-gate expand. Zealots on the way out, as you do expect the pylon block. Now, the lack of pro block from Nightmare might actually be kind of weird. It actually is a little suspect. For Nightmare, if he was trying to play this out in a macro sense at all, which he's definitely not, you would want to try and block that Nexus. So the actual, like, mere absence of a pro block is alerting herO, but also, of course, the typical lack of second pylon back on Nightmare's side of the map. So you really do have two confirmations. I would say the second pylon not being there might still suggest a potential fake, like not actually using the proxy pylon. But considering the scenario, it is two gateways versus one gateway, and there is no pro block on the Nexus. Nightmare has to all in. There is actually no alternative. There might be something a little bit to play around with if you get the Nexus blocked over and over and over again, but that's definitely not this game. Nightmare decides to go just heavy and all in, not trying to hide anything like that. Doesn't even really mind that it was scouted. I mean, you would want to go ahead and hide what exactly you're doing, so as far as a gateway versus a robo. But anyways, the fact that it's being aggressive, that's not really the surprise anymore. It hasn't been a surprise for a while. herO's already been reacting, and I think, well, going for a robo right after that 7X core is probably the safest thing that you can do. Not exactly something that's going to get you ahead. This did turn into a macro game, though, as Nightmare actually decides to go ahead and kind of move this 3-gate dedicated pressure into an expand, realizing that herO might actually over-defend. I am still a little sick, so excuse me for the pauses, and perhaps the weird nasally voice. But yeah, for Nightmare, trying to play this out actually makes a ton of sense. I like the Adepts as well. I think this is a great maneuver. There is no wall on the high ground. The probe is clearly not there prepared to wall on the low ground, which maybe from now on herO will be mindful of, but missed the opportunity to do so first and foremost. Adepts respond to Adepts, but you can still be target firing. There we go. Nightmare actually only getting 3 probes is a bit surprising. The Adepts didn't really shade into the mineral line, I suppose, so that's one factor, but another factor is a lack of target fire. I think that absolutely could have been 5 or 6 probes, I want to say. Obviously, they're one-shotting through the shield battery if you are microing them correctly, so that's very odd. Bit of a wasted 3 adepts, I would say. Not enough probes damage there, but what that did gather at the very least was consistent scouting. I think you were already getting the gist of what was going on if you watched the front of herO's base, but, you know, the adepts also got into the main base, so that's, you know, we got to give Nightmare something. Because right now, this is a little more awkward for him, as he needs to get some higher technology to actually defend a potential counterattack. The observer of herO that came out, of course, suspect of what Nightmare was following up with, is actually seeing that there's not a whole lot of defense, but this is Nightmare's plan here, actually going for the aggression, was probably hoping to find the army moving out. Instead, finds a bit of a base trade, but one that absolutely favors Nightmare. Of course, not actual base trade. herO never got to Nightmare's side of the map. Just a complete stall of the push out from herO, something that Nightmare absolutely needed. And then actually doing damage, catching that Warp Prism and 3 sentries. 300 gas, gone. Handful of Force Field, a Guardian Shield, gone. And of course, that Warp Prism is not cheap either, and is very instrumental to actually engaging. Nightmare has just bought all the time in the world for him to actually build up not just 1 Immortal, but 2. An excellent Adept block as well. If you guys didn't know, the Adept Shades block each other, as well as Disruptor Balls, I believe, whatever Blizzard has tagged them, I guess, block each other. So that is a cheaper and I would actually say easier micro. It's definitely cheaper, no doubt about that, but I'm just thinking about the, like, the actual micro, making sure that you have the probe selected, or of course hotkeyed, and then actually moving him to the right position if he's not already default. Anyways, the point is, that was cool, but the Adepts could still be an issue if the Warp Prism gets all of them on the high ground. Of course, that's not going to happen, and actually a Force Field from Nightmare. Nightmare is actually demolishing herO right now. You know, we got into a PvP, we got to get things started very, very quickly. Again, excellent block with the Adept, but if you guys needed me to tell you what this was supposed to look like, this was supposed to be herO favored, just with the name recognition. herO is the one that everyone expects to make it out of this GSL group, alongside perhaps Byun or whatever. Yeah, who else is available? But up against Nightmare, Nightmare has almost like really no accolades to his name. You know, a couple of strong runs, couple of beatdowns on players you don't suspect, exactly like this, but not exactly the strongest performer in GSL, and he's just kicking ass right now. It is getting a little more complicated, but 2 Immortals still stand strong for Nightmare, 2 shield batteries as well. Overcharge has already been used, so that Immortal is going to go down, and this is still a little awkward. Nightmare's supply not looking nearly as comfy as it once was, as herO is just determined to actually make this work, continuing to move in here. He's got his 1 Immortal against 1 Immortal of Nightmare. Now both of them can do the Warp Prism micro, and that was perhaps what was missing earlier on. Nightmare is no longer with a shield battery, nothing giving him juice. The shield battery on the higher ground actually just a centimeter away from participating in this battle. It is a micro battle to the last, one that Nightmare, I think, won, technically. Although his Immortal did finally get shot down, I do believe Nightmare did win that. Comes out ahead on the army supply. Faster reinforcement, specifically with the Robo, of course, as well. Makes it ultimately one, like, it was supposed to be favored for him, right? After all the time bought, after the nice force field catching the Immortal, everything really pointed his way, and it still got a little testy. But besides all the things mentioned, you also did have the potential for a probe pull, which I believe happened, right? Maybe a couple of probes, not really, actually. But then you also have the Robo actually producing at home. So there's so many reasons why Nightmare was supposed to hold. It all started with the Stalkers over here, I would say. Or perhaps even a little before that. It maybe started basically as soon as Nightmare put down that Nexus. That, you know, he would see into the future a little bit to know how this was going to go, especially once he saw that herO was going for a Robo first, and he would know that, you know, I could macro this out, but I gotta be afraid of the counterattack. So I guess it really started there, but his choice to defend the counterattack by actually running face first in with the Stalkers was, of course, a risky one. I think it was actually really, really quite good. I'm surprised at how close things are. The probe closeness is actually very explainable. I'm more on the side of, like, how did the army get so close? Oh my god. No, herO, that is a massive mistake. That is unexcusable almost for a professional, if I can be really harsh for a second here. That was terrible. I don't even know what he's trying to do. Clearly focusing somewhere else. Of course, Nightmare almost loses his Warp Prism in return, but that one's a little more excusable. It was on the run. But yeah, the probe count being similar is very much understandable. That I'm not so confused about. Nightmare had to not build probes to go ahead and defend the counterattack, and it's kind of, you know, that back and forth that seesaw going around again. But it's army supply wise, I thought Nightmare would be a little better off a little while ago. Now this is the comfortable position that I once thought Nightmare in. I am back to thinking that he is in a comfortable position. Just to make sure, I don't think the seesaw goes round. I just couldn't think of the right word. It goes up and down. There we go. Sunrise Square is about to go down, and actually that is going to be that. herO, without really any play, didn't have any micro, didn't have any counterattack, was contained on 2 bases. He was trying to go into a charge, or basically just a charge attack. You know, whatever else the army entailed, a couple of immortals, maybe a handful of stalkers, I guess. But he was trying to go for a charge all in, and he realized that just wouldn't work out. Charge was still so far away. So Nightmare takes game number 1 in pretty dominant fashion. I guess, you know, again, I didn't have a lot of time to talk about the circumstances here, but even though herO is the more accomplished player in the last few years, we know that herO has not been doing particularly hot. For instance, the last GSL, he really did quite poorly. But then also PvP, you know, PvP is a Nightmare. And Nightmare is also pretty good at PvP. I think his run, 1 or 2 of his runs, so his DreamHack Atlanta run had a lot of PvPs in it. So it's actually a perfect setup for Nightmare, who might get this confidence boost, a momentum boost off of a potential best of 3 win versus herO to actually make a play for the group. But I'll talk more about that after we get into game number 2. Hopefully we have the time to do so. Game number 2 is going to be an Ancient Sister. And in the top right, taking game number 1, it is Nightmare. In the bottom left, we have herO. And we do have at least some time now to talk about things. It's just the GSL Group B, which I also did not really delve too into, I guess. So who was playing? This is our replays. You guys know that by now, I believe. They do give out replays if you are a Patreon supporter. Patreon.com/GSL, I believe. But anyways, Group B, this is Group A. Group A had Maru and TY make it out, which is pretty freaking cool. And then Group B apparently is not, there was no live report thread for Group B. So I'm looking in the wrong place, obviously. Here we go. GSL Codes. Byun versus RagnaroK is the series 2. So we're in the preliminary match. Nightmare versus herO, and then Byun versus RagnaroK. So I mentioned that Byun's probably a favorite alongside herO if you're looking at this group just based on previous standings, and I think that's still true. I know RagnaroK's such a weird guy. RagnaroK actually has one of the most recent deepest run in the GSL. Yes. Out of all 4 of these guys. Yeah? Yeah. Make it to the finals a couple of seasons ago. Byun didn't make it to the semifinals, but yeah, I think my English is fine there. But anyways, RagnaroK is just like, he's so up and down, he's so crazy, he's so wild. If he gets knocked down in the knocked out of GSL in the round of 16, I don't think that's really surprising. At this point in time, though, herO's kind of becoming a bit more like a RagnaroK. Now, in my opinion, herO's still cooler. Sorry, RagnaroK. But herO is becoming the type of person who's, you know, the high and lows, right? And herO's always had peaks and valleys, maybe more than some of the consistent players like a herO, who's like the most consistent, right? Or Innovation, who is insanely consistent. But it's like wide and even further, right? Like the graph is kind of like doing this thing, and you're like, oh, it's not so bad. And then it goes, and you're like, oh God, is this guy dying? That's kind of herO. And that is honestly a question, like, is he dying as in, is his play dying? You know, is he on a slump and he's about to come back, or has it gone too far, mixed with Korean, you know, StarCraft 2 issues in their scene? You know, I'd be worried if herO does not make it out of season 2 round of 16 GSL either, and he's not doing particularly well in the international tournaments. Yeah, it's actually gonna be really tough for herO. Someone who was basically on a pedestal, right? We said he was the #1 Protoss for a while there. To now be questionably moving on in every single tournament he attends, whether it be a group stage or the first round of 16 stage. It's definitely different. Where Nightmare, it's, you know, can he come up, right? So I guess we're kind of watching two different stories right now in this GSL, which is herO able to bring himself back to where he was, and does Nightmare actually, I guess, kind of accomplish the potential that people say that he has, and that, you know, like, oh, he's gonna become the next best, you know, like he's gonna be the next you know, big talking point of the Korean scene. I don't know. What I do know is that herO is actually attacking. He's getting a proxy pylon despite going for a Nexus. Now, that Nexus was blocked, so that's one of the reasons that herO really has to do damage. The 3 Adepts actually break through the pylon. Nightmare went for a cancel there. Thought he was going to force field. But then he didn't have a force field, so... This turned a little awkward. Now, he has his own Adepts to block, which he's not going to do, so... this is actually really awkward. Nightmare in a little bit of trouble. Has already lost 4 workers. Certainly, herO has made up for his Nexus deficits, as he is ahead by 4, and his Nexus still is yet to finish. It actually might kind of even out a little bit more, but the Adepts keep getting in. And while the Adepts might not actually want to pull the trigger because they're not close to the probes, they're still on the army. This is a real bother. This is a real bother in terms of having to pay attention back at home, maybe not micro your Oracle correctly, and of course, the Oracle hasn't been scouted. So that's another thing. So, okay, so he's gonna go ahead and once again move on in. Attempted Adept Shade block into Adept Shade transfer. Kind of worked out. Like, there was kind of 2 blocks right there. And the Adepts of herO are going to leave this time around, not leave, just kidding. One of them might survive. No, the Oracle's after him. So, none of the Adepts of herO are going to survive. At one point, kind of a harrowing situation. Adepts constantly shading in as you're trying to micro against them and use your own very micro-based units to go across the map. And then suddenly, boom, it's all done. And now Nightmare is the one going to go across the map with the Adepts, and perhaps the Oracles as well, able to attack in 2 places at once. So herO's pressure, I mean, it didn't have to do a lot of damage, but I do think it had to continue being a presence. Ooh, you know, be like, ooh, I'm coming in, woo, I'm coming in. And now it's no longer a presence. So Nightmare can actually start to really play around with his units. He knows he has the map controls. He sends his 2 Stalkers out to clear up that proxy pylon. There is another one, however. herO is still a very aggressive Protoss. And herO is going to go for a Blink 2 base attack. Nightmare is not going to be too far behind him, however, despite grabbing a Stargate and 2 Oracles. That's a lot of gas and money. The Twilight Council of Nightmare is still not that far behind his opponents. Now, what might be very far behind is, in fact, the Stalkers, and yes, that is absolutely true. The Stalker count heavily favoring herO, as Nightmare doesn't invest as many Warpins to the Stalkers, right? They got a similar number of Adepts, but the actual Stalker production was different. And Nightmare, because he didn't have a lot of Stalker production, could go ahead and boot up a Twilight Council and Blink at a fairly respectable time. But the real kicker, and I think this is actually just going to be a counters B situation, is the Dark Shrine. The Dark Shrine coming through here, an immediate reaction to the scouting, seeing that this was going to be a 2-base Blink build. Now, whether it's proxy pylon or not isn't really the issue. It's just, it's without a robo. herO is playing, in a sense, greedy. He is opening up a severe vulnerability to a Dark Shrine, which his opponent would be able to scout and say, because they have Oracles, and say, oh, you know what would be good against this? A Dark Shrine. So, like, absolutely, herO is playing with fire, and it just got worse. As the Stalkers blink in, they blink right into a stasis trap. These Oracles paying off big time. The helpful scout into the main base and the stasis trap combined together with, again, that knowledge, just basically A beats B. That Dark Shrine finishes up, and this proxy gateway of Nightmare, well, it's not done. This proxy pylon could be the end of the game. herO still has no Robo, no Stargate, no idea that his opponent has gone into a Dark Shrine, and Nightmare's just got him. He's got him by the balls, man. To use a bit of a rough imagery, but it's definitely, like, he doesn't even realize it, too. Like, herO does not realize that he is about to be punched in the face. He's thinking, oh my god, I'm killing all these pylons and doing damage, and oh, there's the DT swipe defensively. And now he knows that there could be DTs out on the map. He starts up his robo, but where are the DTs? Are there any warping on his side of the map? Yes, absolutely, one of them. Now, that's actually not enough to kill a robo, I believe, or it might be able to kill 1 pylon, but hopefully there's a backup one. But I guess now the issue is also, did herO do enough damage to his opponents, even if he himself does not take damage to the DTs? Because right now, as he starts to take damage from DT, he was already behind. His attack actually had already not worked. At Stasis Trap buying Nightmare that extra time to actually finish up his own Blink as well as warping extra Stalkers. So herO was already behind, man. And now he's dealing with DTs, and even though he won't immediately die to the DTs, he's dying. Nightmare takes a third base. He knows that he is very far ahead. He's got the perfect unit. You know, every time herO tries to run around and do damage, he's like, oh, DT, oh, DT, oh, DT. That's a funny save. But I guess the overcharge wasn't being used to anything else. Not exactly trapping the DT. The observer should be out soon. There it is. But the DT is actually going to escape. And this is just an excellent game for Nightmare. I mean, he still has herO by the balls. Like, it's not getting any better for herO, even as he doesn't just immediately tap out, which would have also been a somewhat acceptable answer, honestly. It would have been a lot more ambiguous if herO's attack was actually, like, did a lot of damage. If herO killed the main Nexus, for instance, then obviously that's very difficult to call. Or he killed the Simon X Core and the Twilight Council and the Dark Shrine, like, I don't, like, somehow. Then also maybe you're like, okay, hold on. But, you know, Nightmare really was already winning defensively. And then he also has DTs in his back pocket. He were going to try to go for his own Dark Shrine. He knows that there are Oracles out in the field, but Oracles can be out of place, and DTs do just create chaos, which is something that herO absolutely needs. herO is the one that needs time, bot, damage done, hesitations formed, right? Making Nightmare double think. You're like, oh, should I? Oh, should I? Oh, should I? Unfortunately, all of those things aren't going to be at play right here, right now. If herO does warp in 3 or 4 DTs and send them across the map, they could do a lot of damage and create a lot of chaos, but that Dark Shrine's still not done. Nightmare just pounces on in, takes down the third base. Again, really no repercussions for Nightmare with this setup. He just has everything he needs. He has the defense, even with the Oracles actually helping out defensively, Stasis Traps and Pulsar Beam. And Revelation, of course, for the DTs of his opponent. He's got the Stalker in numbers, and even if he didn't, I mean, as long as he plays it safe, and the DTs are almost acting sometimes as scouts as well, then he would never be overwhelmed. But he also has the numbers, so that's an easy-peasy decision to make. And at this point in time, I honestly could fast forward. I usually don't when I cast these professional games, but especially as the 2 DTs of herO are immediately scouted and taken down. I mean, yeah, that is it. That is it. GG. Nightmare with the very clean-looking 2-0. I mean, PvP sometimes do be like that, to be fair, but it's still kind of surprising. It felt like herO thought that he'd be able to take control in this series and in these games, and then every time he put his hands on the wheels, there'd be, like, grease on it. So he'd be like, what? And then he'd go and crash into a pole. Like, that was actually what it was like. Nightmare just greased the wheel as herO thought he was going to be cool, like, Fast and Furious driver. Bit of a shocking start. Let's see if maybe herO can bring it back in the losers match, or if we once again are going to lose herO very, very quickly in the GSL. In the bottom right of Babylon, we now have Byun versus the Blue Zerg in the top left, RagnaroK, for our second preliminary match of the GSL. We just saw herO lose out to Nightmare in a 2-0. That really was rather clean. PvPs can sometimes, again, sometimes be exactly like what we saw, which was just that it became evident that some person was in the lead and then just kind of foresaw the typical options of his opponent and then reacted to them, right? It almost made it look easy in a sense. And then we also see a similar type of setup still end up going to shit, basically. Like, we still sometimes see those last PvPs where, like, herO's kind of behind, is maybe dedicated too much and then has to catch up, and then Nightmare's like, aha, I'm on to you. Like, I'm gonna do this and this, and then it's gonna be perfect, it's gonna go great. And then the other Protoss player does something a little bit weird and it screws everything up. Like, but that wasn't it. That was just one of those lucky PvPs, it feels like. I think Nightmare also practiced and prepared, of course, but it just also felt a little bit lucky, because I think even pros will often allude to luck when they talk about PvP. But anyways, because it was such a shocking result, kind of, just, you know, herO is herO. He loses his best of 3 in the first group of GSL, and you're like, yeah, felt the need to summarize it. But now we're on to a new series. I also knew that we would have time to summarize, because it is a TVZ, and while Byun is certainly not opposed to proxy 2-raxing, I don't think he does it all that often, so I figured we'd have some time. Actually, if anything, I should have been more wary of RagnaroK doing some type of early game cheese, if I was wondering if I'd have time to speak or not, but it's not that either. RagnaroK has done some proxy hatches and some early roaches and pool first and all the good stuff, but not this time around. And Byun is not proxying his 2 barracks. No, he's building them at home, as we know he loves to do. Easily 90% of his games, I would say, still involve the forward 2 racks opener. He has shown, more basic 1 racks openers, or actually shows CC firsts and 2 racks openers, I guess. But yeah. It really is so many of his games, these 2 racks openers, and they do work. You know, I was not a believer when they first popped out, especially because the Reapers themselves are hardly worth noting. Like, everyone can get... The pros can get excited if the 3 Reapers kill 4 Lings instead of 2. Like, be excited as you want. But it's usually not the biggest deal. That's not really their purpose, to do a lot of damage. But then as I realized the strengths of the build, right, the protection of the natural, sure, but then also the secrecy, as no Zerg player would like to go into Overlord speed against this, because what if it is a 4 racks? And then they scout that as the 4 racks is about to hit, and then they have 100 less, plus, actually, because they've also been mining gas when they usually wouldn't, to defend against it. So like, it actually makes the Zerg really second guess how they, the typical procedure, I suppose, of Zerg versus Terran. But it's not so perfected and so amazing that every single Terran player is copying it. But I'm more on board. You know, this has been going on for, let's say, a year, because I really don't remember when I first started seeing this. But if it's been a year, I feel like in the first 2 or 3 months, I was like, but yeah, in the last 9, I've mostly just been appreciating the difference. Now, this is different. Speaking of differences. RagnaroK, he certainly is an interesting Zerg player. Interesting sometimes being the positive connotation and sometimes the negative, you know. Sometimes he's interesting and sometimes he's interesting. But this one is... I don't know, middle of the road interesting, I guess. I'm not sure if it's a good idea or not. He is going into a 2-base setup. You know, he was denied his 3rd hatchery, or he didn't even try to go for it. I'm not sure which one. But that is sometimes a power behind the Reaper opener that shouldn't exist if the Zerg player is wise to the way Byun plays. But sometimes they make mistakes. And if you do not get your drone out to take a 3rd base before the Reapers arrive, or they catch the drone, or whatever happens, like, it can be very difficult to the 3rd base. But we do usually see Zerg players up against the Byun 2 racks opener still get their 3rd base down through hell or high water, you know. But no, RagnaroK almost seemed like he was okay playing into like a ZVZ build, is what we usually would think of a 2-base Roach Zerg build, right? That's like more like a ZVZ thing than anything else. It is with a lair, and he's getting Roach speed. He's also getting quite a few Roaches, and I really wonder about this. Byun is known about the later 3rd base, so he knows that something is up, and that's, I believe, why he got this Banshee. It's literally a safety Banshee, and I believe it's also a reaction Banshee. Byun was probably hoping to go directly into a 2-1-1 right after his 2 racks opener, but now it had to be interrupted a little bit. And in that, with that in mind, RagnaroK has chosen a very good build. As we actually see something, I guess, was out in the... Okay, some Reapers got caught. So they see the Roaches coming. Byun moves his army to the front lines. That combat shield is still a little vulnerable, but that is a lot of Marines with stim, as long as they're actually engaging, right? The medevacs are a little late to the party, but I think just in general, you know, their issue is more so if RagnaroK was able to pop that stim and then run away, and then come back later. Then that might have been more of an issue, but yeah, that was enough Marines. Tank was also about to siege up, so that's actually all Gucci. I was going to say that RagnaroK's plan to go into Roaches, however he got there, is actually pretty good as far as the follow-up goes. Against the 2-1-1 first 2 medevacs, as long as you don't miscalculate the number of Roaches necessary for 16 Marines, which... I certainly do. But the pros typically don't. Then you can defend that just by setting the Roaches in certain locations. By the way, RagnaroK, did skip Ling speed. And then You also have the potential 2-base attack follow-up, which Byun does occasionally, but pretty rarely. He does usually go into a 3rd CC. It used to be that a 1 engineering bay build was a huge signifier. Like, immediate signal that you were going to 2-base all in, but not anymore. So yeah, he does usually go into 3rd CC. But anyways, like, the 2-base possible aggression that could have come out there would have been actually easier handled, I suppose, by roaches. So in that way, I actually like the way that RagnaroK's been playing. That later 3rd base does mean that he's not close at all to being that intimidating Zerg with 85 drones and mass remaxes, right? But that's okay. I mean, certainly Dark has tried to prove that's okay over his entire career. And it would actually, you know, if you put the names somewhere else, you just hid them. You're like, who's playing this? I actually would be like, okay, the 2-base layer roach is a little weird. Maybe it's RagnaroK, and then I'd see the way the rest of the game would play out and be like, oh, it's Dark. But no, it's RagnaroK. So you are going to be in that lower economy, actually really not that much higher than Byun's, but you also have more cost-efficient army. Especially if you are quite conservative with the way that you play with your roaches, and more specifically your Ravagers. If you can retain your Ravagers for the entire game, you're pretty golden. And this is going to be a longer game. RagnaroK is not going to go for the 1-1 Roach all-in. He got Baneling Nest, he's getting speed, he's getting Infestation Pit, so everything points to more of that late game. Byun's aggression thus far, not finding many openings. His own 3rd CC only just recently getting saturated. He did only go for that 1 engineer bit like I was talking about, so his upgrades aren't particularly great, and he did just lose his Banshee, which was mostly for the roaches. Again, he saw something weird was happening in the beginning of the game, but can be useful. You're able to just park it right here, and it gives you an alert. I actually think that's incredibly useful, so maybe more of a mistake to just go ahead and sack it. Because I wouldn't be surprised if he literally just kind of thought on the fly very quickly, like, oh, okay, well, he's done his job. I do like when I see the Banshee back at home helping to defend, because again, going into a later TVZ, we are going to be talking about trying to defend not just the 3rd base for the Terran player, but also a 4th base. And I am talking as if the rest of the game will be played defensively by the Terran. Because I think that is the way it's going to go. RagnaroK has a lot of control with the army swell that could be happening. One thing the Banshee did was... Oh, no, nothing, actually. It was a total failure. Just kidding. I thought it's got the Infestation Pit, but that thing is randomly... What the hell? It's randomly at the 3rd base? This is terrible positioning. This is terrible, SimCity. Like, imagine a tank attack pushing... Okay, anyways. But the scan just revealed that hive. So, Byun wasn't quite sure if he was going to be... all in, very dedicated, whatever, attack. So he set up defensively. Now that he realizes that there is a hive on the way, then he's going to try and move out. However, assuming that RagnaroK is able to set up correctly, which is already not doing super correctly, there is a lot of potential for the Zerg defense here. If Byun wants to 3 base all in, which he's kind of doing, more power to him. He's not going to just sit back and play out the turtle game, not on Babylon, which I'm personally happy for. He's already pushing to the middle of the map as well, which was actually kind of... RagnaroK ideally would have stalled out this push, so that this push is still kind of situated. I thought I could zoom out more. I could not. Oh, he never got to Nibble hooks either. Wow, actually, RagnaroK's missing a lot of shit. RagnaroK... not paying attention when the first move out happened, not able to buy any time. His Ravager count was actually kind of low towards the beginning. His Banelings weren't formed, and they didn't have Baneling speed. Then he let all of these tanks actually progress up to his base, which is really the killer, man. Like, this is actually so much better for Byun just with the positioning. If his tanks are sieged up all the way back here, here, and here because he's still trying to make his way across the middle of the map, RagnaroK has plenty of time to breathe. He's got his Vipers getting energy, he's got his Ravagers forming, he's got his Banelings finally getting the research. Instead, he was totally unprepared for Byun's... Timing's not the right word, but Byun realized, hey, you're not going to all-in me, so it's time to attack you. And RagnaroK was totally unprepared for this. Definitely a mistake on RagnaroK's part, because I think this could have almost been like those PvPs, where RagnaroK was like, okay, this is the situation. I figure I'll scare you with a run 1 roach attack, You defend, you realize I'm not doing that, you attack me, and I'll have fit everything I need in before you get the idea to attack me. I'll fit the centrifugal hooks in before you attack me, I'll fit my Ravagers in before you attack me, I'll max out before you attack me, and I have all this creep spread to work with as well. And that just didn't happen. That did not happen. Definitely not the ideal Zerg play here. Vipers do come in, and those are some pretty ideal Blinding Clouds, actually. 2 tanks also on siege on the high ground. This actually is not the best push, so okay. Decent job there from RagnaroK, who also deals with a drop to the north, so that's not bad at all. But a lot of that creep has been cleaned up. The 4th base was killed. The would-be 5th base was also killed, right? That wasn't even a deny. This 4th base is up and running, and again, RagnaroK can play with a less good economy than like a Baneling player could, but you gotta be careful. And while Byun did add on his additional 3 Raxes first and foremost, he did eventually also add on a 4th base. I do like the Terrans really playing around with the idea of what is dedication. You know, the 2 Rax opener, is that too dedicated? No, apparently. The 1 Engineering Bay, kind of 2 base follow-up from Byun, is that too dedicated? No, he can get that later 3rd CC. The 8 Rax before the 4th CC, is that too dedicated? Do you have to do more damage? No, I can go into the 4th CC. It still has its problems, primarily for the 8 Rax transition. You do not have a second factory very quickly, so your tank count isn't particularly high. And that is a problem a bit here because Byun lost all those tanks in that really abysmal fight. And his second factory must have been later, considering the way that he developed this game. But he's successfully gotten to a 4th base. He's successfully getting to the tank count that can protect multiple bases, not just his 3rd base. And he does still have, I think, room to play around on the map. And Byun is if you're going to guess on one player, I suppose, not doing a bunch of turtling, it is Byun right now. He has his experience turtling for sure. 100%. He actually used to abuse the Raven so much. But as of the last 2 years, he's actually been far more aggressive, trying to make these move outs, even when it includes ghosts, which are usually that turtle. You know, you see a ghost and you're like, oh god, the Terran's with a turtle. He actually still pushes out with that. Now, this is still on creep. And once again, unsieges his tanks, so they'll be in the battle just with their regular DPS. The rest of the tanks were, for the most part, blinding clouded. This one actually got a couple of shots, but not nearly enough. Marauders tanked a lot of the Banelings on the front line, but Byun really has got to skedaddle. I'm actually kind of surprised he paused right there, but perhaps he paused because his drop went back into the natural. He got his tank sieged up as well. And he did manage to save most of his bio, although they got really close to the Banelings. So not the most ideal opener there. Rather attack. I don't know why I said opener. He opened his way to moving out. No, I can't fix it. But it was an okay battle at the end of the day. Byun able to regroup and move forward. Now there is no creeps. The Banelings will be a little less effective. But RagnaroK has decided to go across to the other side, to the other ramp, past the 3rd base. Broke open the natural and is actually getting a lot of these tank reinforcements. None of them really getting shots off before they die. Byun also continuing to drop in the main base. At least is always making sure to have more than one thing happening. Some ghosts getting caught by the Banelings is unfortunate, but the supplies actually look quite even. RagnaroK also with not a very intimidating bank. The supplies being even makes me more worried for him, assuming that Byun will gain control over his main and natural soon. And he is doing that as I'm speaking. His 3-3 had also kicked in at some point. I'm not exactly sure when, but he was pretty on top of those upgrades after his single upgrade opener. And now Byun also has those ghosts. Decent number of medevacs too, which are certainly very important in general, but also especially against a Roach player. A consistent DPS, other than the burst DPS of the Banelings. And again, the supply being even when the Zerg player does not have an impressive bank makes us more worried for the Zerg player. Now again, RagnaroK could be going into a really cost-efficient type of army. Not Banelings at suicide, but rather Lurkers and Spellcasters, right? But now the Ghosts take away that potential ultimate cost-efficient army, right? I would say the ultimate one for Zerg are upgraded Lurkers and Spellcasters. Then you can take so many trades. But when Ghosts are out, the Lurkers aren't nearly as, well, they aren't guaranteed to be as good. And Lurkers aren't even out, to be clear. Baneling Hydra is out with the Spellcaster still involved. Great saving on these Vipers. I mean, they've really been very good Vipers. They deserve lots of pets. Blinding Clouds have been pretty good. They've survived every single battle. Oh, spoke too soon. But Byun has just he has the energy in the tank. He's got the reserves. RagnaroK does not, particularly on the gas. He wasn't exactly flooded with cash, mineral-wise, so I still think He was in trouble no matter what, but very much his gas ended up being a problem. Never saturated these left 2 bases, got his gas in the natural killed as well, and probably lost drones on the 3rd to some of those drops. So that kind of got out of hand. Byun will take game number 1, and a pretty interesting game, I would say. But one that I also would argue RagnaroK mishandled. I think he had everything set up. Someone teed up the ball for him, and he kind of swung and he missed. I'm not saying it's easy to do what I described, the whole like forcing the Terran to defend and then fitting all of the things you need in before their attack. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm just saying that if you do compare it to the most ideal Zerg situations, we see that all the time, especially on this map. And it's a race for the Zerg player to get to their maxed out, upgraded army with Vipers before those tanks and Marines start actually doing damage to their hatcheries. And, well, RagnaroK lost that race, even though I am pretty sure he saw the race coming. So, been unfortunate for RagnaroK. Let's see if he brings it back in the series. So, game number 2 on Royal Blood. On the bottom left, we have Byun. Top right, it is RagnaroK. These players facing off against each other in the GSL Group B round of 16. There you go. And they are also facing off to see who would move on to the winner's match to face Nightmare, and who would fall to the lower match, elimination match, loser's match, or victory challenged match. So I was suggested saying that instead earlier, a couple days ago. Choose whichever one you want. The point is, you fail on this first best of 3, you're already on death's door. You win, you got a couple extra chances. And for both of these players, I actually believe losing here would be a little scarier. At the end of the day, although Nightmare did win against herO, and herO has not been the same herO he was 6, 7, 8 months ago, it's still, you know, it probably still feels a little bit better to face off against Nightmare than it does against herO, no matter the matchup, ZVP or TVP. But I don't know. Maybe they were interviewed afterwards and they said differently. So the point is, the losers match looking even more intimidating than ever. I would say again, though, as I said in the previous cast, the Group A cast, I do think for the most part GSL now consists of people who can beat anyone. Anyone can beat anyone, right? When there was a round of 32 for some seasons, it was pretty freaking clear there was at least like 6 players who would be bopped. Maybe not bopped, but they just would have a very, very low chance to actually advance. And I would say with 16 players, yeah, it is pretty much anyone can beat anyone. Even Maru, who did not lose a map, to be clear, but in his group, he did have some struggles versus TY, for instance. But yeah, Nightmare is still the... It doesn't, you know, instill fear into you, right, most of the time. Which sometimes instills fear into your heart is a pool first Zerg going into a Roach Warren. RagnaroK did go for a pool first after an extractor trick. Ooh, fancy. Now, for Byun, he knows this. He saw the late hatchery. He might have seen the guy still mining gas as well. And so he might very much be thinking it's a Roach Warren. Now, my issue with this is that I actually have not seen the Roach Rush work. Roach Rush work. There's a tongue twister. Against a Turax Reaper opener. Because Byun can scout it. That's certainly one thing the Reaper opener can do. Absolutely. You're going to be scouting it. I meant to change that. Thanks for the raid. So you can scout it and then you can defend against it. Now, how do you defend against it? Well, oftentimes Byun will go for a bunker at the front and then pull the SCVs once he sees the army or knows the timing of the army coming across the map. Now, he's building in this game a bunker far back, so it looks like he thinks, okay, I cannot defend on the front for whatever reason, whatever he's looking into this, right? And that's provides an issue because while Byun might survive the overall attack, his tech lab will not. This tech lab in the vulnerable area, because of just the randomness, the luck, RagnaroK's luck, getting Byun in the bottom left position. But the tech lab probably wouldn't have been much safer over here because the Ravagers still have that range in the corrosive bile. So no matter how you slice it, if Byun does not defend to the front, he is going to lose his add-ons, his reactor and his tech lab. The tech lab with the very important upgrades, of course, but then the barracks also just being less of a production facility. So he doesn't have just maybe 3, 4, 5 extra Marines when he decides to gun it and try and chase this back. Could be a big difference. Also losing your barracks, never a good thing. RagnaroK actually tried to go for that one barracks in the sky, has to settle for the barracks on the ground, which I think is fine anyways. And actually, this barracks in the sky might go down anyways. Okay, we're good. Yeah, Byun has now lost his production, as well as his upgrades. He did build a third barracks very quickly. It was almost like a reaction, actually, to I think what he scouted. I'm not sure about that, but it looked that way. And so he is back to building Stim, but he took a bit of a pit stop over on Roger Slow. Very cheap and very fast upgrades. Not the worst thing in the world, but just the, you know, if it's 40 seconds, that's pretty quick, but it's still 40 seconds away from Stim, which is 121, right? So that's a bit concerning. And RagnaroK, without really having to pull the trigger, he didn't really dedicate to that attack, has done a great job containing his opponent. Now, did he break through him? Did he kill a bunch of SCVs? Not so much. So RagnaroK is still in trouble as far as the work count. He needs to get up on that. But he knows that he's able to retain his army. Not that it was very big to begin with, but he gets to retain it. So he doesn't have to rebuild it in fear of Byun counterattacking immediately. He knows that Byun would probably not attack at all until Stim's done, which he knows he delayed. And then even with Stim done, it'd be very dangerous of Byun to move out. Medevacless. So you might even be going ahead and saying, I think he's going to wait till Medevacs. Because while there are Medevac-less attacks, we see Byun do those all the time. The 4-Rax does it, right? This is a weird game to do that on. So yeah, basically RagnaroK has control over this game, right? So it's not that he's ahead by a large margin, and you're just like, Byun, what are you doing in this game? Absolutely not. Byun can bring this back, but RagnaroK has actually done, I guess, an effective job with his opener, kind of putting the ball back in his court, not letting Byun do the whole Reaper bully into question mark follow-up. RagnaroK kind of forced him to do a follow-up, right? He's narrowing the scope of things that could be happening. And this Overlord, of course, parked right over, sees everything going down as well. So now Byun's the one that has to really think on the fly, right? So he thought, okay, I'll add a third barracks, and that ended up being a second because one died. He decided to go into his additional barracks after that, so he did go into a 4-Rax, maybe his initial plan in this game before he saw that he was being rushed. And only now is he going into a starport, but those are his decisions, right? So he's not exactly tech-heavy. His bio count is fairly impressive, even with the lost production. But his actual attack timing is coming in very, very late. And RagnaroK could be taking this opportunity to build, I think, heavier into drones. I'm actually pretty surprised he's built so many Lings. Almost 60 Lings on the field. He's building even more. You know, prioritizing the +1 Carapace faster than starting up 1-1, I think that, you know, that makes sense. Making sure the Centrifugal Hook starts up, of course, that makes sense. But building this whole army actually feels like a bit of a misplay. And trust me, I am empathetic. Sympathetic. I don't really play Zerg. I am sympathetic to the Zerg's decision-making when it comes to these types of games. You know, do I army? Do I drone? Do I army? Do I drone? But, if this is going to go into a macro game, and that is an if, RagnaroK would be in a lot of trouble. But apparently RagnaroK actually was thinking about attacking here. I didn't really call out the potential of an attack when he was building up an army because Centrifugal Hooks wasn't done. Anywhere close to being done. So that's why I was more so focusing on the potential overreaction, the defensive overreaction. But no, RagnaroK is actually planning to attack. Or is he? Question. Nope, drones are on the way. Byun saw the army moving towards him. Obviously is going to panic a little bit and be like, okay, prepare for defense. Scanned the natural and didn't really see much that told him either way. Maybe more gas would have been an obvious tell that it was, well, not even then it wouldn't be an obvious tell that it was going into macro, right? You need a lot of gas to make a lot of Banelings and Ravagers. I don't know. But that scan was maybe not the best. Maybe he was hoping to find the army back there too. Either way, he did prepare to defend. Didn't happen. RagnaroK kind of maybe not the smoothest journey. Get to the destination, which is 4 base Zerg, 72 drones, about to be 80, much better. And again, Ling Baneling Roach Ravager. But Byun, you know, he's not really that far behind in terms of, well, certainly the economy. He's not behind in the economy at all. army supply is not behind in either, and his upgrades are better. What is lacking, because you might be like, okay, so ZombieGrub, Byun's ahead. Well, yeah, what's lacking is the splash. That's actually a big concern. Everything else about Byun's position seems amazing. But there are very few Wood mines. This factory, I think, was also maybe first used to build a reactor for the starport. Yeah, there's so few of both, right? Because he just was so late to the additional technology. And with RagnaroK potentially posturing for an attack, Byun has decided to play more on the passive side, the defensive side, right? He feels like he can't really move out, which I think is correct. That lack of AoE would be a killer. This is not 2011. You are not Marine King Prime playing against July Zerg. And so the option really is only to defend. RagnaroK might be killing me. I can't really go and kill him. What else is there to do? You don't waffle. You don't just, like, go across every single lane. You just pick a lane. So the lane picked was defensive, 4th base, extra barracks, 2nd factory on the way as well, but with absolutely zero aggression from Byun. And one thing that was very useful for Byun in the last game was that he did at least have one consistent drop. I mean, whether that drop did a ton of damage or not is not really the issue, because I don't think it did, but it was constantly keeping tabs on RagnaroK, making sure that he had to look back home, making sure that he had to resaturate his gases, which apparently didn't do, and made sure that Byun had some backstab opportunity, so RagnaroK had to be a little more concerned. This is actually nothing done to RagnaroK at this time. So, also something to think about. Once again, RagnaroK kind of driving here, decides to pull the trigger. It is a fairly well set up bioarm with a lot of it, but again, that lack of splash and also so much of the bio being off to the left side, that was not the ideal start to the fight for Byun. If he had all of his army in place with that spread and his Wood mines burrowed, at least 2 of them I believe were not burrowed, I think that was a terrible fight from RagnaroK, but he saw only a certain size of army, said, you know, I can take that on, so that some of the Wood mines weren't burrowing, weren't going to fire, made him even more confident he could take it on, and then he did. Didn't win the game, didn't even get the 4th command center, but not a terrible attack overall, as RagnaroK still, I would say, is in control of this game. Lots of creep spread, 5th base on the way, 6th as well at the gold, and just ready to max out over and over and over again. He does have a hive, he could be moving on to Vipers as well, but pretty content to try and engage with Ling Baneling. 1 Ravager. Oh, here's the other one. Banelings rolling into the SCV line are going to get some damage done, but really not a whole lot. Byun defends well. Making sure not to be caught off guard either direction. And now he even feels confident finally to move out on the map. Still not a whole lot in the way of area of effects, but he is almost maxed out, so the bio ball is kind of intimidating. It's moving pretty deep on a creep, though. I don't know. Ling's also going for a counterattack, because that was the planetary! Oh, you greedy boy! Byun is a greedy, greedy boy, and actually doubly so. He is so greedy. He actually moved even farther onto creep. The Banelings, however, don't really make a lot of connections. They kind of come in a conga line, but the rest of the Zerg swarm is coming in. More Banelings as well. Lings and Hydras adding in little bits of DPS, and Byun is going to be forced to evacuate. That was a bad double whammy. Loses access to his 4th base, 16 workers, the complete saturation on it, and he also loses the main fight. I would say if he was actually mining on his 4th base, that wouldn't have been a tremendous bad fight, right? Like, if he's actually mining, all 16 workers are mining happily and peacefully on a planetary that just defended, I think Byun's totally fine. That was probably an okay trade, because that was a little bit cockeyed for RagnaroK. That wasn't perfect for him either, but as it is, Byun was a little too aggressive with the army and then has lost his economy back at home. Looking for revenge, but things are still questionable. Widow Mine's not available, but Marauders are tanking the front lines. Another stim as the Marines go for a split. Up the ramp they go. Here comes the reinforcements yet again, and the medevacs are out of juice. And that's what I was actually about to allude to. Oh my god, I have not seen that, heard that in a long time. That is not the overlay that I wanted. But okay, RagnaroK is actually going to win. So that was a terrible timing on my part, but how did that, that just went down? Yeah, so Byun once again lost his 4th base access, so it's another double whammy. All right, now they got everything fixed up. Okay, Byun just could not recover from the 4th base damage and the army not really doing the job that he wanted, so turn around, 1-1, let's go into game 3. Game number 3 on Gresvon. Oof, big map. Known for a lot of late game TVZs. Top left it is RagnaroK, bottom right it is Byun. Both of these guys pushing this TVZ best of 3 to maybe 14, 15, maybe 16, one of those. But not really late game. Not quite to late game, I suppose. Game 1 got kind of close because we did get a decent number of ghosts. The game number 2 did go a fair way. It actually started off very interestingly, and we're getting, once again, that similar start for RagnaroK as he does the extractor trick. Someone in chat saying how the extractor trick thing might not be something that modern day Blizzard devs like, which I think you might be right, but then I don't know how you would excuse away the drone Zerg build mechanic. You just have to completely change the way they build, right? Sacrificing it. I guess maybe you could make it so that the sacrifice of the supply only hits when the building is done. But that actually feels like a pretty tremendous nerf. You got supply locked up and a drone locked up not mining. Anyways. Things to mull over while we watch the spawning pool finish and RagnaroK do his build. Byun, big surprise, going for 2 racks again. It's totally fine build. You know, that last game did get a little bit complicated because there wasn't that forward bunker defense, and I'm not really sure why there wasn't, actually. And that's not because I'm smart enough or savvy enough to, and, you know, have played this build enough to know that you could. No. I'm actually just not sure what exactly was different in terms of the Terran's build and the Zerg's build that made it so that particular Roach Rush against that particular 2 racks opener could not defend with a bunker on the front. Because I swear I've seen very similar builds, okay? Maybe not exactly similar. I've seen very similar builds go up against each other. And Byun goes for the forward bunker defense. And when I first saw the forward bunker defense, I thought it was crazy. And I think he did lose it the first time I saw it. He did actually lose the bunker and lose the game. But that was a year and a half ago or something like that. Like, he's perfected the 2 racks opener and the forward bunker defense. And you could see why it is so important to not have your barracks be destroyed and your add-ons be destroyed. RagnaroK not going for the Roach Horn this time, by the way, so not the same build. But yeah, I don't know what exactly happened, but it created a lot of craziness, like a lot of awkwardness, that Byun was kind of doing okay adapting to, but the lack of pressure that turned into a lack of technology. No factory units, very few starport units. Really made that game very, very problematic for Byun, for a Terran player trying to take back control of the tempo, right? So that's kind of sucked. But he doesn't worry about this time, so I guess I'll hold off on my wonderments about the whole non-bunker issue later. Again, it's just like, I know it looks like the Ling Roach Ravager bus would kill that bunker, but I swear I've seen the same thing before, and it just barely doesn't. Or it does, but with so few units left over that Byun can make an emergency defense in the natural, but I'll move on. We do have a 2-rack startup and into a 2-1-1, so something that he did in the first game, actually. I called his Banshee as a safety Banshee due to the pool first nature of RagnaroK's opener. Perhaps this is, again, that, because this was... Yeah, I've actually forgotten. Is this a pool first? It's looking really weird with the extractor trick if it wasn't, but I was busy pondering other things. Anyways, it could be, or it could just be something that he's implemented into his build, because I think that actually might be the case. The thing about this particular 2 racks opener compared to a more typical 1 racks, 2 racks opener, 1 racks expand into 2-1-1, or a command center first into 2-1-1, is that it does seem like if you were to immediately add on the reactor to the starport, your medevacs would be out too soon to pick up 16 Marines. So I actually think this is very much on purpose. It's like a flaw that's been patched up in the build, almost. Like, because the Banshee sometimes feels like a real loss. You know, like, it's scouts, it's the safety, as I was talking about, and I like when it comes into a play a little bit later into the macro game, and hey, it may kill a couple of drones. But otherwise, yeah, like, it's almost like you can't get fast enough to the 2 medevacs, or you can't get fast enough to the 16 Marines, or something like that. I mean, the Banshee popped out. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have 16 Marines. But again, maybe focusing a little bit too much onto the builds. The point is, we have Byun going for a 2-1-1 into the tank follow-up, so very similar to the first game. I also want to highlight, because I didn't back then, that there was a contamination on the Engineering Band Gamer one. You don't see those too often. Marines move out prior to the medevacs being available, a real risky move, but the assumption is that a Zerg player will not be building Banelings to defend the very first medevac push out. They don't necessarily have to if it's just the 16 Marine drop. If it's anything more, then they're going to want Banelings. This is more than 16 Marines, actually, I think. But again, it's not necessary that you need Banelings. The Lings surround plus the Queen target fire in the medevacs is often enough. Banelings just make it extra duper super careful. One thing you could be sure of for the Terran, though, is that they're not going to be moving too crazily on creep, in case there are Banelings formed. And that, if there are Banelings, well, they don't have Baneling speed. So, Byun could try to run away even without medevacs. RagnaroK has definitely defended against the first wave of attack, which is why I'm wondering why he's still building army. Seems like he's very much wary of a 2-base follow-up, like an actual 2-base follow-up, which again, Byun has not done so often. Oh, wow, the rocks actually are broken down in time. I was wondering what is he doing? You know, why not just pick up? But he was trying to break down those rocks. I still wonder if sticking around is really the right move, though. The Reaper Grenade was fun and all, but that just seemed like ultimately a loss for Byun. He was hoping to take down maybe a couple more Banelings off of creep before he actually evacuated. I guess it kind of worked out. One thing I know for sure is that RagnaroK made too much army. For the rest of this game, this is too much army. He had Lings preparing for a run-by that never worked out, that turned into the defensive Lings, then he made more Lings, then he made more Banelings, then he made more Banelings afterwards, and now he needs them. But you know how the Zerg economy works. The tanks will actually tank a lot of the Banelings. They didn't necessarily get too many shots on them, but they actually helped tremendously. A little Sim City almost there as well, as the Marines got picked up and dropped back down. RagnaroK is in trouble economy-wise. Like, I believe he will hold against this as he continues to hold on to creep, and now his Baneling speed is done and all that good stuff, but Byun's 30C is actually on the way. This is not a 2-base committed attack. And RagnaroK is only 3 workers ahead of a Terran player. Excusable if you are defending an all-in, where they pushed all their chips in. Not so excusable if this game's going to go any longer. Byun might also be hobbling a little bit economically. You know, his saturation isn't there on his 3rd base, right? It's not the prettiest economy for a Terran player. But RagnaroK is just, he doesn't have legs, all right? And no one's giving him a freaking wheelchair. Finally adds on a couple more drones, but it's still not that impressive. Byun's starting to drop in the main base and attack on the front lines, hoping those Banelings were just A-moves. Now the tank will be saved. At the end of the day, the Baneling to Marine cost here might still be more beneficial to Byun, as long as he can defend a counterattack, and that is actually still a concern. RagnaroK might not have much of an economy to play out the macro game, but if he can find the right attack, if he defends against the 20 Marines and a tank, gets all of that, and then immediately counterattacks, Byun could still be in trouble. But that would be the kind of perfect timing that RagnaroK is apparently not getting, as Byun does not fear the counterattack in this particular time, finally getting his own saturation as 3rd base, starting up 2-2 as well, and continues to be aggressive on the other side of the map. RagnaroK now at a 10-worker lead is looking better, but is also supply blocked and still losing a lot of creep tumors. Fortunately, his Queen's still up and running, although I think they're helping to defend, so maybe they're not always on the front lines. I'm not sure where they are. They're just kind of all around. He must have done an inject and got the Queen screwed up. So the creep is not being replanted. I'm not just pointing out RagnaroK's faults for no reason, because I hate the guy. He's like, that's an issue. This creep is not going to be replaced anytime soon. This creep also going to be cleaned up again. Of course, it wouldn't be replanted anytime soon, as this is very much where Byun wishes to target. Well, maybe not. Besides, moving in closer is unnecessary. He could just move to the north. Either he finds a potential 4th base, or he finds a complete lack of creep spread. And that's what he finds. 4th base is actually over to the left side, so sorry, 5th. 5th is in the middle, and that is targetable by tanks if they were sieged up here, something that RagnaroK was very intent on not allowing to happen, because he should be. You gotta stop the Terran from getting over there. But this location is still rather difficult to defend against. RagnaroK has fixed up his economy, by the way. It's been a little trickle of drones every now and again, but he finally has that consistent income. He managed to take good enough fights that he is also fine on the army supply. It is the creep spread and the fact the Terran tank army is right in your face. Right there. And that is truly intimidating. And perhaps this would not have happened if RagnaroK had been able to drone first army later, a little bit more like a greedy Zerg would want to do. 2 tanks will eventually go down. Actually, 3 tanks, sorry, one in the north as well, but they are getting tons of shots. And that 3rd tank got a couple extra, actually, so that was really a fine battle for Byun, who's even baking a little bit, not able to get enough production fast enough, but he is absolutely winning. He could at least start up a couple extra barracks. 3rd command center? 4th, rather? 4th command center, there we go. But if he didn't, he also could maybe have like 20 more supply, and then it'd be really, really, really good. At a 30, almost 40 army supply lead, it is still good, of course. It is still good. RagnaroK is the one who's struggling to get the income. His 5 bases are up, but his 5th is not going to mine as Byun once again charges towards the middle and finally will claim it as his own. He's planting the Byun flag right there, and it's really hard to dislodge for a Zerg player, especially when they don't have Vipers. And RagnaroK is nowhere close to getting to Vipers. No infestation pits. I'm not sure what building actually died there, by the way. Oh, an evolution chamber. But no technology, just good old-fashioned surrounds, which RagnaroK is not set up to do and is not maxed out to do either. Yeah, RagnaroK just could not play out, I think, the order of TVZ on this map like you would want. Going back to the drones, which led into perhaps the inability to stall out Byun's pushes and his harassment, the lack of creep spread, which furthered that problem. And then actually having to take consistent battles. Even though RagnaroK ended up at some point having drones and army, he was having to rebuild army fights, right? Rebuilding Lings, rebuilding Banelings as they are suicidal. So he didn't have extra cash in his pocket to, you know, Infestation Pit, Vipers, Ultralisk Cavern. No, of course not. Byun, well, took advantage of all these factors, right? Made sure not to over-push and then get overwhelmed by a Zerg player who actually did make army, rather than try to be greedy as hell. Waited for the creep to actually dissipate before really moving in, always abusing the tank spots on Gressfon. I mean, the goal is often exactly what we saw here for Terran players. Push, push, creep spread, push, push. Okay, finally I got like 5 tanks locked up here. What are you going to do about it? And usually the Zerg player's response is, I have Vipers. Not this game. So RagnaroK still has a shot if he takes a really good fight, but Byun is definitely looking like the better player in this game, number 3, as he takes his 4th base. A Baneling roly-poly might kill his SCVs. Yeah, some Marines as well. 14 SCVs do go down. Not bad on the Banelings, and Banelings on the front as well, hitting some of those Marines, but perhaps not enough. Byun still holds on to the army supply lead, that's for sure. Another hatchery is going to be targeted down. Oof, and the escape. Barely able to escape. Just barely. Liberator's been harassing too. So that's 2 hatcheries killed for RagnaroK, 19 drones, well 3 actually, the 3rd is also still dead. RagnaroK is back down to just 3 bases. Only 10 workers ahead of his opponent, and Byun does have 4 bases, so he can replace those SCVs if he wanted to. Apparently doesn't want to. And RagnaroK goes for one last push just to see, you know, like, can I, like, maybe? Nah, not at all. Byun will take the 2-1 and face Nightmare in the winner's match. RagnaroK will have to try his luck against herO. And the winner's match, starting off on Royal Blood. Top right it is Nightmare, then I'm going to probe lickety split. Bottom left it is Byun. If Nightmare was herO, and it could have been, herO was also in the group, but he lost to Nightmare. I would not even bother talking about proxies. herO loved sending out that probe very fast. The fastest that you can. You can't get any faster. Just to harass, just to be a real dick. I don't know if Nightmare does the same thing, but he might. And it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. Just be a real dick. It is a lot of lost mining time, I suppose, but when you do consider how often the SCVs have to be pulled to and fro, it's also lost mining time for the Terran player. And you really do have the fastest possible scout. That is secondary. That's why I brought it up second. Like, it is secondary. This probe's just supposed to be a real pain in the ass. The probe scout sees nothing is going on. There is still the potential of a second gas coming down, but that is quickly disappearing. Yeah. So yeah, 1Rex expands. And a little bit of SCV damage. A little tasering going on here. If barracks still isn't done. Yeah, you go for it, probe. You go for it. Doesn't have the shields, though. Okay, shield regen kicking in. Come on. Come on. Go for it. Go for it. Too late. It's going to be Marine first as well, so it's going to pop out very quickly. Something that Nightmare might wait around for. Basically, if you know your timings really well, which the pros do, I don't. The probe could try and stick around to see if the Marine pops, but the Marine can't chase it. Okay, well, that was unfortunate. The SCV blocked it. That's exactly what Nightmare was trying to do. All right, Nightmare was trying to get back in to see if it was a Marine that had just popped out, and then ideally the probe runs away because the Marine gets like 2 shots before the probe runs. Or if it was a Reaper, in which case nothing would be on the field. Reaper takes longer than Marine to build. But that SCV coming in, I don't know if that was intentional, if Byun saw that coming, or just coincidence. I'm kind of leaning towards coincidence, but that body blocked the probe, Warcraft style. But that SCV was also apparently going for a high ground command center, so that's why I'm kind of leaning towards coincidence. Byun goes to the Marine first into the reactor, so a very greedy opener because he has 0 scouting. But with the high ground command center, you're kind of like, you know, pluses and minuses here. You're going for a trade and it's like +10, -5, right? On the safety, it's still kind of safe. The Hellion should be basically only for a scout. It's possible Byun's thinking about it, some type of drop opener. But back on Nightmare's side of the map, he has gone for his expansion. Nothing tricky so far. Twilight Council on the way. This is where trickiness could start. Is it Blink? Is it Dark Shrine? Is it 4-gate? Is it 2-gate? What is it? And now as we come into a typical TVP, 2 base versus 2 base, we can talk a little bit about the expectations of these players. We do expect Byun to win. I'm not exactly sure about his results against Nightmare. But again, Nightmare is up against someone who has a very long and decorated history in StarCraft 2. Not StarCraft 1 for Byun, but still. So Nightmare just comes in as a bit of the underdog, based off of name, but also, yeah, TVP, which I would say is still absolutely something that is an issue, to the point where I don't just kind of skirt over it. Sometimes issues arise in the balance and design of StarCraft 2. Let's be honest, it happens. And as a caster, if it's not egregious, I'm just kind of like, and I'm not even sure it's a balance thing, because that's always hard to determine, but if it's not balance as in straight up nothing can be done with the units you have given me, then sometimes it's the players haven't figured it out, right? Oh, you can't do this one thing against this guy, against this build, against this race. Well, how about this other thing? No, that's stupid. No one does that other thing. Well, hold on. Like, that happens as well, right? I can say that Protoss as a whole race kind of struggling at the top level, the very tippity top level, I should say, against Terran. For, I guess, like, really kind of boils down to 2 reasons. The variety of play that Terrans can do, their openers and their follow-ups and their composition and their styles and their tempo-based play versus their, you know, as well as the 7-minute attack is kind of the real rumbling going around in the circuit, right? It's like the 7-minute attack of the Ravens. So what do you do against that? Well, so far, Protoss players have been doing kind of one of 2 things, actually. It feels like in the last 3 months, it's been one of 2 things. It's either a 4-gate, which is the Max Pack special, really. He always 4-gates. And that's fine, and that's dandy, and that pretty much works if the guy hasn't prepared against the 4-gate, so good for you. Or it is a 2-base reserved Colossus build with some trickery. So Classic tried to play against 3 Terrans in his group. God rest his soul. He didn't, you know, manage to win, spoiler alert, but he really did try to make them weird which I think is, you know, people are saying the aggressive Protoss tends to be better. And then he did try to play some of the most streamlined, finest defensive robo play, but adding in those twists. So he went for Templar Archives, which actually Nightmare is doing right now too, instead of the anticipated Robotics Bay. Or he went for a Colossus Attack with a Warp Prism, which failed utterly and completely. But the point is he tried. So that was pretty cool. But those two seem the two main branches of the 4-gate and then like the 4-gas into 3 bases. No one's really going for the mass gateway anymore, which makes me sad. And the Storm versus Colossus kind of still feels like a bit of a trick, you know? The Storm is just not... It's not bad, but it's not as reliable as Colossus. Colossus might be giant giraffes with laser beams attached to their head, but they are very reliable for such a crazy thing. Storms can sometimes be unreliable, and they do take a lot more work as well. You have to ferry them around in the Warp Prism. And what can still counter a Warp Prism? A Raven. So even though this Raven is just... It's not like it slips a robot, but you know, it's like looking for 2 Colossus. I'd love to see 2 Colossus. It sees a Warp Prism instead, and it's also going to pop that with an Interference Matrix. Byun has managed to scout that it is in fact a Templar Archive, so he is well aware of what he is up against. So he has everything planned out ahead, right? He can actually imagine the Raven going for the Interference Matrix, his units dodging around, his Marauders on the front line. Of course, he's going to go ahead and think about Ghost Academies, but as I said in the previous group, you don't want to just, you know, skyrocket up to a Ghost Academy. You can take the Autobahn and go fast, but you really can't just go into Ghost willy-nilly. That was the deny on combat shields, by the way, which is pretty nice. Byun's Marine drop not doing so hot, or maybe doing enough, I should say. What the fuck? That one Marine got to be saved. That is Ripley and a cat. That's it. It's not even Newt, all right? Newt's not even in there. Fuck that kid. Why that Marine? What? That's gonna go back in and die. Yeah, that's not. That was funny. I guess he just figured that one Marine was the only one that could be saved. All right, auto turret harassment in the main base and a supply block issue for Nightmare as well. A bit temporary. Now there's one for Byun, so you know it's evens. But for Nightmare, he is about to be attacked, and that is the worst time to be supply blocked. This one Marine came back to kill 1 probe. Are you kidding me? The attack on the right side is the bigger issue. Medevac will finally get taken down, but Nightmare's army is now over to the right side. He does have an observer and a pylon on the right, so he's actually fine to respond. Byun could not gun his way over to a 4th, as there was no 4th. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. The cat died. Jonesy's gone. Combat shields only just now finishing up as the drop does commence. He scans ahead. He sees the Protoss reaction. He knows that this is on a timer, and he knows that Warp Prism is probably gunning for him. Those High Templars, exactly, trying to get those perfect storms. That was a good split, though. That was a very good split from Byun, I would say. Just the right amount of units to really complicate things for the storms. Now, the storm does hit the heart of the army, but it was full health, so it's able to escape. I mean, not all of the army, of course. But still distracting on the left side, too. Auto turret kills a couple more probes. How many probes in total is that? The course of the 9 minutes of this game, 20 probes have gone down, but it has not felt like it. I think that's 21. You know what I mean? Like, there was no Wood of Mine that popped off and killed everything. That was just, it was 3, 4, 6, 9, 3, 2, 1. Like, okay, now it's just continuing to go up because, well, the drop's hitting at the perfect time. That's the probe damage. There you go. And Nightmare throws his hands up in the air and says, whatever, man, I'm going to attack you. But Byun has not even moved over to a 3rd CC. He has been totally content macroing on 2 bases, doing his drops, and waiting to see how Nightmare was going to play this out. If Nightmare had grabbed a 4th base when his first move out happened, he might have already slapped his 3rd CC down, but he saw no 4th base. He wanted to do his drops. There was no real reason, I suppose, move to his 3rd base until he was completely saturated. I think he probably was going to take his 3rd CC a minute and a half ago, but then realized he could be counterattacked because he is super oversaturated, you know? So he has been planning to build the 3rd CC to get it on location, but it's a good thing he did not. And if he did, it's a good thing that he evacuated immediately. He needs to be turtling up here. This attack from Nightmare is not going to work out. He has to make up for 25 probes worth of damage. It's not working. Bio army now even coming out of the gates as the EMPs have led the charge. Only 1 storm remains. There you go, 1 storm. Looking. Warding. Guarding. It's the only thing that is going to allow a safe retreat for Nightmare. He has no reinforcements. I don't know why he's continuing to do this, actually. This is extremely dangerous, because at this point, one storm's not going to make any difference. The medevacs have peeled everything up. Reinforcements have arrived. Ghosts are back in the field. I don't know why Nightmare's just staying here, man. It's a really dangerous game to play. Very dangerous. Because even if he moves as soon as he sees the bio army, Stim is a hell of a drug. Literally. He would still pick off all the High Templars and the Zealots and maybe the Archons, like one or two of them, before he actually escaped. But I guess it was a conundrum. He kind of had to be as scary as he could, despite not being very scary at all. Because he needs time to recover. He still needs more time, and he needs a second form of splash, which he does not have. All of the High Templars are out of juice, and the bio army is able to stim and win. Shield battery overcharge, not going to stop Byun from taking game number 1 with his upgraded bio and ghosts and medevacs. His third CC is under fire, actually. 19 SCVs went down, but nope. Doesn't matter. GG. Byun with an excellent game 1 victory. Game number 2 is going to be on altitude in the bottom left, on the verge of making it to the round of 8s. He is Byun. And in the top right, still a second chance, if he does fall here in the best of 3. It is Nightmare. Nightmare does fall 2-0, or 0-2 for him. He will face the winner of herO versus RagnaroK, which 6 months ago, I would have said herO, but even then, RagnaroK was also kind of feisty. But now, I think RagnaroK might have a steadier level of skill than herO. Which I think is saying something. I think RagnaroK has been very much up and down. herO is up and down, but just, again, the graphs. It's like... I could literally bring up a graph. I don't even have to, like, visualize it, right? Like, if, herO was like this. Now he's like... And RagnaroK's always been very up and down. So I don't know, man. I think RagnaroK actually is favored down there. But I hope that's not the case. I'm still a very big herO fan, but it has been a bit difficult to be a fan of herO in the last couple of months, since he has not been going very far in tournaments. But it is a good time to be a Byun fan. Although when his own body hurts him, you know, when it's impedes his advancements further into tournaments, such as in Yangchiping, that makes it hard. Makes it hard to be a fan. But in a different sense than it's hard to be a fan of someone who's losing all the time. Byun, fortunately, has 0 issues when it comes to online play, and I do want to remind everyone that it is being played online. Actually, no. They changed that, didn't they? Just kidding. But still, even though he has actually no issue online, and he has a tremendous issue offline, GSL has somewhat been like a middle ground. To, you know, so there is that. Like, I think he still does experience issues, but for the GSL, maybe he's just comfortable there, more comfortable than traveling and all that good stuff. Anywho, he seems to be doing all right today. All right, so it's not even a point really worth bringing up. Nightmare has had a couple of really cool runs, and I think that a lot of people have become fans of Nightmare over the last 2 years. I was hesitant because it basically was like, I've been hurt before. You know, I've seen these Korean StarCraft players, all races, come up and be like, hey, I do something cool. Hey, I'm kind of good. And then completely fall flat. Especially because people seem to forget that a lot of these guys aren't new. Nightmare's been playing since 2013 as well, guys. So, you know, you're looking at it as like, is it really going to be the time in which they do well? Or am I just getting on board of a very short-lived hype train? Yeah, Nightmare actually seems to, like, he's not making a lot of waves, but I feel like his ripples are pretty worthwhile, you know, like a solid skip across the pond with the pebble there. So, I hope he does well, because the Protoss race as a whole does need to have a few more representatives when it comes to the round of 8s, round of 4s. Byun has gone for a 3 racks opener, guys, but it is not just the 3 racks. Actually, yeah, okay. It is a third CC 3 racks. So that third CC came down really, really quickly. Coincidentally, and it is a coincidence, so Byun has done no scouting. Nightmare has done some scouting with the probe. Actually, he might not have scouted at all with the probe. I'm not sure. I checked that a bit too late. But he absolutely had no idea about the follow-up or the third CC until the hallucinated Phoenix came in. So rather coincidentally, because this was actually a Stargate opener, which is making me kind of crazy. I'm like triple, quadruple confirming that was actually hallucination. It was. It's kind of a surprise whenever a Protoss player actually opens with a Sentry as far as their first 3 units. It's definitely not like the most common opener, which, the most common opener would go into like 3 Adepts, especially if you go into a Stargate. 3 Adepts with the Stargate, or Adept, Stalker, something along those lines. So that's a bit unfortunate for Byun, who wanted his 3rd CC to be hidden a bit longer. But the funny thing is that this was a Phoenix opener anyway. So why is that funny? Well, because a Phoenix, the first Phoenix, could pop out and go right across the map and get that similar scouting. Like, the timing of the hallucinated Phoenix and this Phoenix is fairly close. Now, maybe not close enough to safeguard a Stargate Phoenix player from an actual 2-base 3 racks. So that's probably the biggest fear, and why essential hallucination is very much necessary. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, and a Phoenix dies, that's freaking terrible. Let's go ahead and talk about Nightmare's potential defense against this 3 racks, which again is off a 3rd CC, so not as potent. A Phoenix player has a terrible time against the 3 racks. A 3rd CC 3 racks still is a bit intimidating. But Nightmare has gotten that super early scouting. I like the hallucination. It's going to mess up Byun's AI, even if Byun himself knows it's fake. And the Sentry, the shield battery placement is also fantastic. You can see how seriously that Nightmare had to take this, though. 2 shield batteries on the high ground, 2 shield batteries on the low ground. Like, this is a pretty severe defense, and one that might not even work. The shield battery overcharge is denied. The Immortal gets gunned down, and everything else is getting gunned down, too. Of course, the Colossus not being any help whatsoever. It actually should be targeted. Huh. I'm actually a little surprised there. I have to double check some things. So let's watch this game, because apparently we have to, but Nightmare's pretty dead. That was almost all of his army. His first real Colossus finally pops off, but almost all of his army, and 10 workers. Byun happily 3rd CC on location, up 10 workers himself, finishing up his upgrades, his production as well. Medevacs on the way, I would assume. Hello? Oh, there they are. Okay, there we go. So why was I kind of like weirded out by that? There was no scan. There was no Raven, right? Generally, an issue with hallucinations is not the fact that a player thinks it's real. It happens, you know, famous Idra versus Huck game. But rather that if you do not scan, the AI will target it as if it is a real attacking unit. There was a scan on top of the army the entire time, even when I was dumbfounded. All right, that's very possible, because that's what I'm inclined to believe. I guess it's little like boo thing had dissipated and I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, I thought this was already gone. You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm gonna move on. Although Nightmare is gonna have a much tougher time moving on. he was slapped. He was slapped in the face, man. He recovers in this game. That'd be pretty impressive. It's not the biggest recovery I've ever seen, but it'd be a big recovery. And perhaps after the game is done, we can go back and check that. Occam's Razor is probably in play right now, but I'm gonna go double check. This drop in the natural is adding on more damage and a little distraction. Nightmare was paying attention to his army, however, so the Colossus is not going to get sniped, but the drop is still doing damage, right? Nightmare does not have enough army to respond to 2 fairly sizable attacks, especially as they have better upgrades. So these Stalkers, for instance, without Blink, even with Blink, would have a tough time. Only 1 Zealot to try and help out, and there we go. There is the GG. That fight around the Colossus, the hallucination, was in fact the end of the game. Do I use a Razer mouse? No. Oh, yeah, there was. Well, no. So this is actually exactly what I was talking about. Okay, so I'm not that crazy. Or... yeah, no, this is what I was talking about. Yeah. So let me just see this again. All right, so This made sense. So the scan is revealing to, of course, Byun that's hallucination, but also to the bio army. So the bio army, well, is going to target fire the immortal anyways. That's not an issue. But now it's just kind of free firing, right? It's not targeting anything. And I guess it's going to just target what it's already targeting. But this is where I thought the okay, so that's what it was. But then, I'm sorry, this is really detailed. This is not what people came here for. But so, like, it killed all the units it was already targeting. And then it started to target the Colossus. But then, in this 1 second, 3 seconds, so everything that he's already killing dies. He starts to kill the Colossus. Then he starts to move forward. He's not target firing. Or maybe he was. Maybe like look a little bit. Maybe he was target firing that actually. You know what? I think he was. Okay. Alright. And then he re-target fired again on that like weekend soccer. Okay. It was just a very quick sequence of events. So what I was trying to explain in general was that if you don't scan or have a Raven, the AI will be like, oh, Colossus is attacking me. I'm going to attack it back. Because that's what they do. But if it dissipates, then usually the bio army, but if you have a scan, then it avoids it, right? Just like you would avoid it. So what happened was that there was a scan, so it avoided killing this. There was target fire, avoided killing this. There were higher priority targets, so it avoided killing this. Then this was a target priority, but Byun started to focus fire. I did it, guys. I did it. Super not important, but yeah, I was very curious. I was gonna get all hyped if the Colossus started to tank actual important damage, but then it didn't, so it was kind of lame. But all right, Byun wins 2-0. Yay! Byun moves on to the round of 8. And Nightmare, like I said, faces the winner of either herO or RagnaroK. And we're going to watch that series next. We are now in the elimination match. Whoever loses this is out of the GSL round of 16 and will have to try again in Season 3 later this year. In the top left, the Dragon Scales, we have herO. And on the bottom right, we have RagnaroK. I have a Ligulac up anyways. You can go ahead and look this up. herO vs. RagnaroK, as I had explained in the previous series while we had some time, is a matchup that I would have favored herO for 6 months ago, but not even that much. I think RagnaroK could still take him down. And then in the last few months, so 6 months ago I would have said that. In the last 5 months, I guess we'll say, I actually think that RagnaroK might be a little less erratic than herO in terms of performance. I am much more cautious of herO losing. And not just because I am biased towards him, I'm just gonna admit it right now. But because I actually think that he's struggling. He's struggling a little bit more. It's almost like his identity as a Protoss player is that an issue. Like this. And he's trying to figure things out, and it's actually like watching herO when he first came back from military. This is a fake, so it's not important. But RagnaroK potentially over-defending would be important. He did not. But herO, when he came back from the military 2, 3, whatever years ago it was, he looked like an awkward teenager. It looked like his legs grew before the rest of his body, you know? So he was like blinking forward aggressively when he shouldn't. He was taking really absurd fights. He was experimenting with like NA builds. He definitely faced like 5 NA players around the 5200 MMR and was like, that's a build. I'm gonna take that. And it just was awkward. Especially because there'd be so many moments of like greatness, you know? It's like he grew up, got to be like 6'5". He's like dunking basketballs and people were like, oh shit, this guy's definitely going to the NBA. And then you watch him try to walk across the court, like run across the court, and he trips over himself every time. Like that. That's what it was like. And then he finally got his land legs, all right? Like everything grew along with him, and then he was a perfect herO. He was the guy that revolutionized PvZ. He was the guy that was the hero. He was the Protoss hope. He won Jamaica Lanta, yeah. And now he's back to being the guy who occasionally dunks. And it looks really cool and really awesome. And you're like, oh, damn, herO, you still got the skills. But I'm not, like, he's not he's not there again. He's back to just like occasionally getting dunks and then mostly tripping over himself. Is what it feels like, and I really don't like saying that, to be clear. I really don't. But he's still doing things like messing up his walls, which has always been a surprising factor for herO. Like, this has been a thing for him even when he was really, really good. So that's always funny. I think this is a fine wall. He'll do the whole like over dedicating thing when he shouldn't. His ability to size up battles is once again suspect. And in general, perhaps not in this matchup, but certainly in his PvT, he just doesn't seem to really have an idea of what he wants to do. You know, it's like a strong Protoss. Max packs, even when at the times where it seems like it's overly stubborn, will do the same thing, and he will not waver. I'm gonna do it. herO's like a little different, and if he does choose to be stubborn about something and say, yeah, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna like just go for it, doesn't seem to end as well. We did have a decent number of lings just made from RagnaroK. His intention to cancel or deny the third base is probably gonna work. It's probably actually gonna flesh out. Oracle does arrive into a rather undefended natural. Doesn't overstay, however. Realizes why is it overdefended? Or underdefended, sorry. Not that lings would help, of course, but yeah, that was unfortunate. The third Nexus being delayed was one thing, but the lings getting to the main and the natural is another. Well, actually, hold on. Well, we watched RagnaroK just make drones. Actually, I kind of feel like this is easier for the Protoss. I know it sounds weird, but the ling count wasn't high enough to really do a lot of damage in the natural and the main. You know, if it was 10 lings get in and then 20 lings show up, I mean, that's a disaster. But 10 lings quickly dealt with. The Oracles had to use their Pulsar Beam. They had to come back home. They're not scouting the follow-up. Those are 3 problems for herO. But his Nexus is just building this entire time. That's why I think it's actually kind of nicer. His Nexus is building the entire time, and this pylon that is often killed in the process of killing the Nexus is also something that often supply blocks a Protoss. And he doesn't have to worry about that either. So in a weird way, I actually think that was nicer. I know Pig had this conspiracy theory that I think has since been proven wrong back when herO first started to play again, that herO actually intentionally lets lings into his natural. And I think I think that's not true. But sometimes when you watch stuff like that happen, you're like, but what if? herO on his third base, now also properly protected, is going into Blink +1 attack. So not going to dedicate to a mid-game attack, rather look on to 3 bases, 4 bases. RagnaroK, you made some lings at some awkward times, and I mean, I guess in total, you look at the resources lost. It's actually fine. The 12 lings did not die in the defense of the Adept, it looked like. Right? Because 10 lings are out in the natural, but I mean, they must have also defended against the Adept. So like, the 12 lings did their job, I suppose. And both of them had a pretty equal work count. 3 Oracles still alive and well for herO. Definitely want to do more damage, but so far RagnaroK actually defending well. I mean, he was under-defended in that natural. But the Queen was, I think, moments away from being transferred, so. Oh! Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. You know, the 2 most obnoxious stasis traps. They aren't the biggest stasis traps, but they are obnoxious. The Gas Geyser drones and the Queens, which, fortunately, drones do mine through them, so they're not blocking the minerals, but still. These lings are trying to run around. There's so many of them that they are really quite intimidating. They could absolutely go for a backstab that would be painful, but the Oracles are tracking them, and now the Stalker count is high enough with Blink to actually deal with them. herO has been loving this recently, and I do not love it, but he is the much better player. We'll talk about it in a second. Stalker aggression, fantastic. Oracle control, great. I love this part. This is the fun of PvZ. This is what made me a herO fan all over again. Well, I already was one, but then he also revolutionized PvZ, and it's like, oh, super cool, awesome. Well, now he's no longer so gung-ho about the mass gateway army tactic, which is fine, because it does seem to be figured out. A lot of Zerg players seem to think that it's okay to deal with. But I don't know if the new hot thing is actually going directly into a fleet beacon. That's what I'm questioning. That's what I'm not sure about. That's what I don't like. Because one, it's a boring way to play. A personal bias really shining here. Two, I just don't know if it's actually the most conducive to victory. Because while we have witnessed it win, it seems when it wins at a very slow pace, one that is just asking for a comeback from the Zerg, you know? And two, occasionally it just falls right on its face and doesn't work at all. So like, it's definitely not perfect. I don't know. This might be one of those games where it just has a very slow victory to it, but we'll see. RagnaroK does have enough army to deal with the ground of herO. This is not so much an issue, although Zealots against Lings is a bit unfavorable, even with the Lings having +1 melee, so the Zealots actually doing a lot. The stasis traps are also doing way more than I thought they did. A lot of stasis traps coming down, more charge lots run across the field, and this is all just buying time. Because remember what herO has in his back pocket, a 2 carriers about to pop. And whether they have interceptors or upgrades doesn't really matter. RagnaroK has nothing that shoots up if he tries to counterattack. So herO is willing to throw away a decent amount of army as long as it creates problems and buys time. And, well, you do have to get some damage done with like 10 zealots across the field, of course. A couple of queens died, 12 drones died, handful of army was traded out as well. Overall, not a bad situation for a Protoss player who would be going over into a 4th base sometimes, right? The 4th base is building. It's finishing. Who's replenishing the Stalkers and who's going into Archons and Storm. And for a player who has carriers, of course it was fine, because the carriers rule all. The carriers have nothing to defend against them. Queens are pretty good. Queens will be the initial defense, but the trick to that is having them all alive and together. And we see a problem here. So this must have been what herO was trying to do in some previous games that I saw him, and he failed at it. But those charge lots and Stalkers were very specifically even targeting the queens down. Now, see, that didn't happen last time I saw this. Last time I saw this is RagnaroK does tap out. The Roach Ling player just defended the charge lots almost no problem and still had like 8 queens ready to defend against the surprise carriers. They defended against the surprise carriers, they recovered their economy, they went to Aspire. It was a PvZ for you. Nothing special. But okay, this makes sense. Finally working out the way that herO intended. The aggression into the utter lack of anti-air from the Zerg player. So, okay, this looks cool now, all right? But I feel like if this is your first time looking, this is your first time seeing this, it's false pretenses. Don't believe it. Don't believe these lies. Thank you very much for that gifted sub, Aranianak. But seriously, like, herO has at least 5 other games that I can think of where 2 were straight up losses when he did this, and the 3 others were, one was like a loss, but after a long, grueling battle, and 2 of them were actually kind of okay, but they took forever. Like, he was already winning, and then it took forever for him to win. So I, people watching GSL are going to be like, "You're a big brain!" I'm like, I don't know, but I do like the way that it happened in this game. If this can happen again in all your latter games, more power to you. Still, herO's build all damn day long. But herO probably gets that one as easily as he did, and is going to have to fight a lot more for the next few. So let's see what happens. In the bottom right, we do have herO. In the top left, it is RagnaroK. Has anyone made a really awesome RagnaroK pun yet? Probably not. Unfortunately, while RagnaroK is a good player, GSL finalist, sniper to some degree, like I think he can actually kill anyone, he can defeat anyone. And he's a really fun player. Like, he does crazy builds and stuff. I feel like the hype has never really been behind RagnaroK. The hype builds because he starts doing well, then he faces Maro in the finals and everyone says GG. The hype's building, he's doing well, he beats Serral to reach the round of 4 in IEM Katowice, and 1, people are kind of disappointed because typical Korean killing foreigner negativity still exists, I would say, 13 years in. But also, because who did he face in the round of 4? Maru again. So it was, the lamest outcome for that semifinal. So RagnaroK is just like, you know, nothing about him. His play is not lucky, although sometimes it is. His, like, story is unlucky. It's like this guy should be, I feel like, written into the history books with a stronger ink, you know, than he actually is. Because something about all of the times that he does very well, there's something to it that kind of takes away the power, the magic, the belief. In a way, almost RagnaroK's a tragic figure. But anyways, herO's going to go for a proxy pylon against a Zerg player, which is fairly uncommon. When it happens, it means one thing, and one thing only. It means it's going to be a Stargate. We used to have Classic. Wait, it can't be a Stargate. Isn't near the gas. Yeah, it did take a second gas. This can't be. Yeah, he's going to go for proxy gateway. Well, thank goodness. All right, so I was going to say, back before Classic went to the military, I remember he had a couple of games where he went crazy PvZ. He was building a pylon out here to build 6 gateways in his Twilight Council. It was like, what? And it worked occasionally, too. But ever since then, basically you saw a proxy pylon in this matchup. It was for a Stargate. But, I mean, he didn't have the gas, because he delayed a second gas, but also the placement of it should have been my first, you know. Alright. So it is a Stargate. I wasn't wrong. It's going to be found, though. RagnaroK actually sending his link across the map. So what he noticed, I guess, was the lack of second gateway. Why in the world would you do what herO is doing? This actually is really confusing. So this... he's gonna... But... I can't even begin to explain why I'm so bewildered by this. Like... Does it suck that it was scouted? Yeah, but this is hardly a situation in which you say, like, oh, it's so unlikely it would have been scouted. Well... Alright, here, let me try and explain my thought process while we watch this happen. RagnaroK has an overload over the natural. All Zerg players do that on basically every single map, right? They would see the lack of third wall structure. Alright, because either that's a Stargate, and the gateway's in the main, or they're being greedy and they're going one gate Stargate. Expand, I guess. As the two adepts get just completely bulldozed, and this also is a disaster, and this whole game is a disaster. I can't even take time to explain why this was so bewildering, because it's already a disaster. What? I'm gonna take some time after, like, the pylon's gonna, oh my god, this is a disaster, holy shit. Just tap out, it's gone. All right, we got the Jonah Hill gif going on right now for herO, just like, apparently that guy's a dick, by the way, I guess I should stop referencing that. Bizarre. So, okay, so this game's not gonna end right here, right now. But RagnaroK is, I mean, definitely ahead, all right? So the numbers don't show that he's ahead, but he's taken out a production facility. He's taken out the Stargate potential entirely. Okay, there's one Oracle, sorry. Like, it's so awkward. So, anyways, the Overlord sees the lack of third structure. It's either a Stargate, in which case they're one gate Stargate expanding, or it's the second gateway, which is far more typical. So then you have the wall off and you have 2 production facilities to help the rest of the game. And you don't see that. You don't see that for a second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then you go, what the hell? They start sending links around. Only a Zerg player who would believe they are facing the most normal Protoss in the world would refuse to believe their eyes. Which I think would happen, actually. Like, if Showtime did this, I actually wonder how many Zerg players would be onto it. Because, I mean, what else could it be besides something proxied? Like, something has to be placed here. I don't know. I feel like I'm really missing something as far as the big braininess of this, all right? Before I start leading people down the path of, you know, hating on herO. What a dummy, what a stupid build. Because right now, it looks like a train wreck. It looks like a disaster. No one ever do this build. But there must be something involved here that I'm missing, that herO was like, you're gonna do that, and I'm gonna do this, and you're gonna do that, and then I'm gonna win. But I really don't know what. I really don't know why you would proxy your second gateway and your Stargate. Why not just proxy the Stargate? We'll never know. We will literally never know. I have no idea. The game is actually moving on, but like I had pointed out, RagnaroK should be ahead. Tempo certainly favors him. herO's supply is not that bad, but he has a complete lack of opener. Right? The Oracle as a single Oracle can't do very much. Oftentimes, if you go single Oracle, it's because you're trying to build into something a little bit quicker besides that. Like a faster third Nexus, or a surprise number of gateways, and a faster Twilight Council. And that didn't happen in this game, because it was just awkwardness all over the place. Nexus is going to have to be canceled. Back at home, we do have a couple of Archons and Charge Lots coming into the mix, and I do like this follow-up idea. I think herO going for this particular attack as a follow-up is actually pretty cool. However, it is too little, and the Zerg player will go ahead and defend that easily. Actually, a Spine Crawler even made to defend, I guess. Not really sure about the Spine Crawler, but yeah. The Overlord did get into the natural and saw... Oh, it's Twilight Council. Maybe it figured that out. The third Nexus was canceled. So at least herO got the money back, but that is not a good thing. And now herO maybe is going to try and go into some... Disruptors? RagnaroK is building up to, I think, just a supercharged 3-base army attack. Nope. Spoke too soon. Couple of drones on the way. 4th base is going to be placed down as well. But if he did just go for an attack, I mean, I think that would be fine too, right? I don't think it's a bad call. He's got his lair. He could be getting roach speed. And that's the one thing he is not getting, so I guess he shouldn't be attacking. Yeah, okay, so he's not going to attack. He is going to join up a little bit more and then go into a Spire. I think a big Roach Ravager Ling Swell wouldn't be bad, but I guess you are working with some of the most basic units. Because even if he was getting Roach Speed, we're still talking about having to build the Ravagers and then no Ling upgrades, and I guess. So, he goes for a riskier option, which is a Spire. Risky in that it can be detected, it can be scouted, and it is scouted. And then herO, I was going to say, might be able to push into him as he builds the Spire, but that's not this game. That is not the type of game we're playing here. I guess it's actually not risky at all in this type of game. It's almost like a why not. Oh, what a bully drone. You know, like the Spire 200, 200, but I'm pretty far ahead. Just defended your follow-up attack after finding out this weird proxy shit. Like, why not? Why not throw it down? For herO, it costs a tremendous amount of money to defend at this point because his economy was in ruins. He can't attack as soon as he scouts it because there's really no guarantee his army is strong enough. I mean, he can, just I don't think it's going to work. So let's find out. Roach speed is still not done. I actually think that RagnaroK might have just forgot it. I'm not really sure, but no roach speed and a disruptor looking to hit the middle of the roach army. It's a little sketch, but it's on creep, and that one did not hit. Blinket +1 are finishing up, and herO's attack is really the best he's got. Again, to herO, kudos for adapting and out of that terrible opener. I could see if that opener did work in any fashion, you know, 6 adepts, I guess, warped in with the proxy oracles arriving faster than anticipated. I could see that snowballing. Whoop. Okay, only 3 roaches died. I could see that snowballing, but we just never saw the potential for that build. It was already picked off. And I kind of want to see it. I wanted to see what this game would look like if that build started the way that it did into the Charge Lot Archon attack. How much better would it have been? Oh no! One disruptor doesn't get picked off. RagnaroK kind of coming in with a surround. I don't know. It's actually a very dangerous attack from RagnaroK. Again, all basic army. Roaches, now Ravagers. Hardly any Lings at this point either. It's not a very complicated battle, but it is one that perhaps numbers will win. I met RagnaroK's numbers, but it's very clear that the Protoss army has defended the attack well as they were commencing their own attack. Now the attack will actually commence. After RagnaroK, I feel like threw away so many units unnecessarily. He didn't have to attack like he did. You know, finding the disruptor, that was cool, but then just continuing to attack. And now 2 disruptor shots going off. RagnaroK supply dangerously close to herO's. I mean, there's the... Oh, Jesus. Okay, 18 mutas are on the way. What the shit? When did he get that much cash? Okay, well, that makes more sense. I was like, how is RagnaroK going to lose this game? That's crazy. That's crazy talk. But he took a pretty bad fight, and then he wasn't trying to reinforce. He was banking money to build almost 20 mutas. Which finally pop out, by the way. Kill the Warp Prism. Disruptors are saved, but they're not so good against mutas. 4th base is on the way for herO, which is great news, but not great news is the amount of static defense you're going to need against 20 mutas to defend the upcoming onslaught. Surprisingly stable game for everything that's gone down here. RagnaroK, I still think really made a really bad fight right there. This could have been so much potential in the land army. Almost having to Hail Mary go into the mutas. Because he had a bank, so he would have been able to replace the army that he lost on the ground, should he have, you know, chosen to. But even then, he'd be replacing them with the same basic units. So that's like, just taking a bad attack like that was very dangerous indeed. The mutas do better in terms of time buying, but even they are actually struggling to be as dominant as I thought they would be. Some excellent defense from herO. He does have the Stalker Blink, and he has +2 on the Stalkers as well. These are things that you really do need against mutas. But at the end of the day, Blink Stalkers often are not enough. Not that they get overwhelmed necessarily, although that does also happen, but rather that just can't keep up, so they go for the Hail Mary counterattack base trade, and the muta player wins that one. The actual stopping counter to mutas is the Phoenix. Here we're gonna just throw out the balls. Well, he's got him. One disruptor might live, not even. Supercharge battery doesn't get to save that. However, there's not much else on the ground. It really is about the sky, and herO is actually a little too low on the Stalkers, surprisingly enough. The shield battery was prioritizing a cannon, not the Stalkers. Archon wasn't involved in the fight either, which is obviously great against the mutas, and, well, not the best defense from herO. He was defending 4 bases at a time there rather nicely. I was getting pretty impressed, but then he did take a bad battle on the 4th, and it wasn't necessarily because of the land army, which we know that oftentimes it's muta land, muta army. Like, that wasn't really the issue, as much as it was just the amount of mutas finding a particularly abusive location. And now herO does the Hail Mary base trade that will not work. 24 Stalkers and an Archon against 33 mutas. Little magic box will be necessary, but it'll do the trick. And there you go. Archon out of the equation, Warp Prism out of the equation, Stalkers all types of bunched up, getting nibbled on by the Lings and the Glaive Worms, and that is that. RagnaroK will take game number 2, but it took him 14 minutes, and I thought he was going to win in the first 4. Not only did he find the proxy, he got Lings in the natural. Not that many Lings, sure, but still. Like, that just, it seemed like a disaster, and instead it created a kind of close game at a point. Interesting. What will game 3 have in store with us? Because herO keeps on bringing out surprise builds. Game number 3 here. In the bottom top right, it is herO. In the bottom left, it is RagnaroK. I have a theory as to why sometimes casters say the wrong direction, and it's not because we don't know directions. I think it was because I was looking at the bottom of the Nexus. Don't at me if you disagree. Just go with it. Get a little zoom in on the kitty being cute. Up, I ruined it. You get some money back from Roddy. Roddy was a poker bully. Sometimes I don't even realize he's a poker bully. Because what Roddy does is that he's such a nice guy outside of poker, and in poker he even does nice things, like, you know, he doesn't really care if the rules are, like, you know, broken accidentally, right? Like, as long as it's not egregious. He teaches people who come in and want to learn. You know, he gives his own money out to people who want to play, so I didn't have cash on me, but he gave me cash so I could play. He does all these really nice things. But then in an actual poker game, I don't think he realizes how much of a bully he is. Sometimes he definitely realizes it. Because he'll do the whole, like, I'll do this, and you'll do that, and you'll do that, and then I'll do this, and then I'll win. And you just, you know, you're just like... I'll show you. And then, of course, he wins. But yeah, a poker table can get... not intense, necessarily, but it can get, high stakes, perhaps? Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps that's the right phrase. Anywho. Just talking about some home story cup stories. All the YouTube watchers out there. We do have a very typical opener this time around. I was paying attention to the mini-map to see any proxy pylons. They did not have any. As I said, I really think that I was missing something very intelligent by herO. To me, it really screamed... it screamed a build that would be scouted. I don't know how to put that better. It was the Overlord being able to see consistently lack of gateway. I guess if it's Stargate gateway, which it usually is. Yeah, then I guess... Okay, so hold on. I'm actually trying to figure this out with now a direct comparison here. Because, like I said, like there's got to be something much smarter happening than what I was noticing. So, okay, so the gateway doesn't go down until now. The Stargate comes down first, right? So he would have had, like, an additional Adepts, maybe 2, with his Oracle attack. And that was the secret behind the proxy. So RagnaroK just had the good, I guess, foresight to scout around the map against a guy like herO. Because the second gateway wasn't what tipped him off. The second gateway comes down too late for a tip-off. But he just was scouting with a link. That is very unfortunate for herO. And again, I could see how multiple Adepts, 1 or 2 faster than expected, with reinforcing Oracles faster than expected, would actually snowball. I actually do see that happening. That does not take away from the fact that that last game began with a disaster. That was still the right call. Like, the build was scouted, the Lings got in the natural, herO's Adept pressure did absolutely nothing. The Oracle was left alone, so it couldn't do anything either. Like, it was still a disaster, but it makes more sense now that I've seen it and can play out the regular scenario in my mind, which is Nexus, Stargate, Gateway. Or Nexus, X Core, Stargate. You get the point. Interesting. Well, herO's certainly playing a normal game now. 3 Oracles do combine together. Unfortunately, as far as a 1-for-1 trade, not favorable for the Oracle. Cost gas. So RagnaroK could be fine with losing that queen, I think. Would his gas income have been enough to pull it off? And that's also an interesting question. I suspect so. I mean, as much as that ended in disaster, we should always assume that the pros are doing, you know, the correct builds. So I assume he would have had enough. Anyways, 3 Oracles down to 2. 2 still very capable of killing more drones. The game goes on, or stasis traps, which herO really has been very consistent with. I haven't really highlighted it, but he's been very consistent. 3 drones go down for an Oracle ride. Drive-by, fly-by. Float-by. It's going to be a Ling-based Zerg, by the way, for RagnaroK, which I don't believe he's been quick to. I don't think he's gotten to it in the last 2 games, right? We had +1 missile last game for sure, but I've totally blanked on what happened in the first game. All right, carriers. We're going to go to 4 Oracles, by the way. 3 Oracles back again. RagnaroK wasn't expecting that, so the queen did not move quickly enough. I think it kind of died as long as it was away from the Spore Crawler. It's pretty much a guarantee. So 3 oracles still alive. I am amazed that the queen range, hello? Imba? Jesus, all right. So the Lings try to go for a run by. They still don't have the +1 though, so they aren't really intimidating. What they do, you know, when they get +1 melee, they'll be great against some stalker pressure, which is exactly what herO does. And herO does this still very commonly, right? He might not be going into mass gateway, low gas, many nexus styles that he was bringing out versus Solar and Open Cups a year and a half ago, but he does like to still open up with the stalkers and blink, right? So the pressure is going to come. And it is going to be backed up by a proxy gateway. So he does have all 4 of his gases. It's not the most dedicated attack, but he is absolutely looking to continue warping in. The Lings with +1 melee are nice to have against this, for sure. The problem with Lings is whether or not they get a surround. Do they get a surround? Do they get in sizable enough numbers to actually affect the battle? Because if you have 20 Lings with +1, that's okay. 50 Lings with +1, well, that actually would probably send herO packing. herO a bit more aggressive on the 3rd base than might be wise, but I guess he saw the Lings attacking that other pylon, so he knew it was relatively safe. More stalkers coming in as well to try and help out. Those Lings did get some time on those stalkers, but not able to actually get some of them straight up killed. Many of them injured, but not dead. And the Oracle still helping out against those Lings as well as herO looks to continue the aggression, backs away into a corner, trying to take away that surface area from those Lings. The Lings still are pretty freaking feisty. They also, of course, tank some shots. The Stalkers do have to spend time clearing out those Lings, which means the Roaches might just be able to start contributing to the fight as well. Now, they also would love to turn into Ravagers, so they might be able to contribute to the fight, but I'm not sure they want to overstay. The Roach is actually dying as they were hoping to collect some of these last final kills. So many Stalkers once again injured but not dead, and now the Lings are all gone as well. And RagnaroK is also running low on Queens from the earlier battles with the Oracles. The Queen's being pulled to the front as well. Injects could be a problem if money is not, and money certainly is. RagnaroK is trying to hold on with every last penny here. This is the loser's match. Whoever loses here is out of the GSL for the season. And herO is knocking on RagnaroK's front door at third base is instrumental to RagnaroK's victory. He can't just give it up at this point. Maybe he could have on the initial defense, said whatever, man, he can have it. But now that he's tried to defend and he has failed, it's going to be it. herO has made some magic work out here. It's a good thing he won with that first battle, that first game, because that second game was not super pretty for him. But the third game was basically exactly what herO does best. Not really any trickery, just some solid, straight-up aggression. Yeah, it's a bit of committed attack, sure. He doesn't go into Archons, doesn't go into Immortals, doesn't go into Robotics Bay. But yeah, pretty straight-up herO style. Does defeat RagnaroK 2-1. And herO will now move on to face... let's see here. So Byun made it out first, and he faced off against Nightmare. I'm sorry, Nightmare. So Nightmare has been waiting to see who he would face, and it is going to be a rematch of herO versus Nightmare for the decider. And now the decider match. Who will make it through to the round of 8 in the GSL Season 2 for 2023. In the bottom right, we have herO. In the top left, it is Nightmare. Nightmare did take out herO in the first match of the day, 2-0. But if you guys are new to watching StarCraft, and specifically the GSL, you might not know about the rematch curse. I don't know if anyone has done the math and figured out if it's actually a thing for the GSL, but it feels like a thing. And I know the last time I brought this up in the last season, some cast had it. I talked about this curse, and it's cursed the decider match again. So, like, it actually did happen. So, is it going to happen again? Will Nightmare succumb to the curse? Or will he actually defeat the odds? Not just curse-wise, which, you know, believe in it or not. But also literally just like against the odds in terms of defeating herO. The guy who you just look at his name and you're like, oh, okay, he makes it into the round of 8. I don't know what my beliefs are for this series. I don't know who I'd put my money on. I'm a big believer in the Decider rematch curse, though, so I think I'm going to lean towards herO, but actually just for that. Otherwise, what's making me really second-guess my usual biased answer is herO losing to Nightmare, sure. Pretty convincingly as well, but again, PvP sometimes just looks that way. Like, you can watch a best of 3 between 2 Protoss players and just come out of the best of 3 thinking, for sure, A was much better than B. 100%. And then you watch them again, and it's the exact opposite. For sure, B was 100% better than A. Just like it happens in PvP. But herO also didn't really have, I think, to me, the strongest losers match performance. I think his game 3 that we just witnessed was great. That was smooth. That was very herO-esque. Just a nice macro, nice micro, nice follow-up, strong micro on the attack, as well as the Oracle usage, so on and so forth. Second game, the opener, now that I got to see it compared to a typical PvZ opener, I could see how it would work, but it was scouted immediately. So, yeah, that was very unfortunate. And then, game 1, he went into his surprise carrier maneuver, which I'm still not a believer in, but it did work, but it definitely felt like a cheese, Like, it depended almost entirely on being unscouted to work, which I think is a component of cheese. So, I don't know. The more I summarize it, the more I feel like I'm actually not giving herO enough credit. But, yeah, I'm just a little worried for him overall, and I will continue to worry about him for the rest of his life. And 5 years from now, I'll just be like sitting, doing some desk work or something, and I'll be like, I wonder how herO's doing. Okay, those are my favorites. And I would like to see him move on to the round of 8s, but like I was talking about Nightmare. Nightmare does feel like he is the, not quite the opposite story of herO. herO is kind of looking for redemption a little bit. It's like he's in a slump, he's trying to redeem himself. Nightmare has just been trying to prove himself for the last 2 years, and he still needs to prove himself, right? So definitely not the opposite story, but, yeah, two stories that are actually colliding right here, right now. Who will actually move on in Season 2, and who will follow, perhaps once again in the round of 16. We've had typical PvPs, actually, so I've had the time to speak about this as much as I want. And we also get into now the scouting phase of 2-base versus 2-base PvP. I'm going to scout you. No, I'm going to scout you. I'm going to scout you. No, I'm going to scout you. Nightmare has gone into the Twilight Council follow-up, which is a little more expected, and into Blink, so very normal. herO actually went into the Robo follow-up. Now, this is interesting because I think if I've missed something big, perhaps I have, unless I've missed something big, I feel like herO has known that this has been a regular game. And a Robo first off of 2-base versus 2-base it's limiting. It's not necessarily bad, but it can be seen as limiting. What you can do, basically, is attack, and there's like, oh, well, duh, like, Warp Prism goes for the attack. Great, thanks, man. Well, yeah, you can attack, but you're not attacking with a lot of very powerful units. You are basic stalkers.
Arming raid defenses.
And, of course, sentries, which have some energy, I suppose. But you're going up against a guy who has very similar stuff. So the big difference is that you have a Warp Prism, and the other difference is maybe you were warping in more than your opponent, but that's not a guarantee. Especially if your opponent has a sentry hallucinating and seeing exactly what you were doing. So you see the Robo, you know that they could build a Warp Prism, they could go and try and attack you, so you might play a little bit safer, but you know that after whatever amount of time, you're going to have Blink, and they're not. And you're going to have that map control. So even if you don't get your third Nexus up right now, presumably you can... Right now, actually. So you couldn't get it up 20 seconds ago, but now you can. So, yeah, now what you can do with the Warp Prism is try and do Adept Harassment, but which is actually exactly what herO is doing. But you have to be very careful with the Warp Prism. The Warp Prism is still an expensive loss should it die. And the Adepts inside are also still... You know, they're useful, right? You definitely can't put Immortals in this thing if Blink is done for the opponent. The Blink actually is such a strong tool in PvP. Not just because of everything we usually talk about, map control and micro and survivability and out-positioning your opponent and just everything that goes along with mobility. But it's also just the only real answer, I would say. One of the best answers, I guess, the better way to put it, against the Warp Prism. Which, without the blink openers, there were a lot of PvPs that went to a mortal micro versus a mortal micro in the Warp Prism. Like, oh, I'm killing 5 probes, oh, I'm killing 6 probes, oh, I'm killing 4 probes. And then someone would just get tired of it and build a Stargate and get a Phoenix. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, but still. But now, yeah, using a Warp Prism against a guy who went into the more typical blink opener, kind of dangerous thing to do. herO's third base is on the way, but you can see that it is much later than Nightmare's. That's the way things are supposed to go. herO could have tried taking the Nexus faster, and then just probably would have had it canceled by his opponent's Blink Stalkers. Now, herO does have 2 Immortals, so that Robo wasn't only for the Warp Prism, of course. He did bust out 2 Immortals, an Observer for detection as well as vision. You know, scouting. But the Immortals sometimes aren't the best either, actually, as we continue to scale up in a PvP. Sometimes the Immortals don't provide as much as we would hope. But right now, 2 Immortals, Guardian Shield. Shield Battery is helping. Actually, Nightmare Sentry's on the front line, so no Guardian Shield for Nightmare. But once the Immortals are a little more vulnerable, tap it, pop the shields, now focus fire it, exactly what Nightmare has done. Actually, focus fire the second one, but still, in case, you know, end result's the same. However, while this is happening, the Warp Prism did go back in. This is perfectly timed. You know that they're completely focused on defending the main attack. However, the Warp Prism does get taken down thanks to a quick recall. Adepts in the main base, however, going to collect even more probes. 5, 6, 7. Can we get an 8? I don't believe so. Great trap by the Blink Stalkers. Nightmare down by about... Okay, he just built 3 probes. He's down 6 workers. That's not terrible. He has had to also spend time cleaning all of that up. So perhaps an immediate counterattack would have reaped some reward. Maybe not now. You know, if herO had just warped in 6 Stalkers in the last 30 seconds, let's say, 20 seconds, that would have been a considerable difference in army supply. Now he's warped in. He does have a shield battery, which is, you know, that would be the ultimate safest thing to do, but... You know, he has warped in, he has matched his opponent's army supply and is now even surpassing him. So Nightmare not able to get any type of real counterattack in. Again, cleaning up the Adepts as he was. He is going to build more probes. And... Oh, it's Dark Shrine for herO, sorry. So, herO adds on a Dark Shrine. I mean, we know that the detection is available for both parties at this point. I don't think herO's planning on trying to catch him without a Robo. Yeah, he scouted that. No, he scouted the Immortal, that's right. So yeah, he knows that there is no chance for the DTs to just straight up win the game. What he's hoping for is a little bit of harassment, a little bit more chaos as well. Speaking of, Nightmare getting Adepts in of his own to herO's base is going to get some revenge for the earlier probe kills, and in fact, a lot of revenge. 9 probes go down, all this harassment. Nightmare also looking around on the map with the Stalkers. I wasn't sure exactly what for, because he was posturing over here for quite some time. Then he does actually retreat and finds the warping in units. Yes, you do. You did find it. Don't give me a liar. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. All right, so we'll be like, too late, too late. Maybe he figured the Stalkers were on his ass. And they were chasing, but anyways. herO will now have a proxy gateway right up and close to the third base of Nightmare. Also, another Warp Prism went into the main base and actually managed to get a warp in. The Stalkers did not kill that fast enough, so Nightmare is now dealing with 2 locations being hit. He's also still a little farther down in supply. His economy is fantastic, but he does not have the supply. And that blink in right there was excellent. Shield battery gets taken down. Stalkers of Nightmare trying their best to win this battle. And they do have the Immortal helping out as well as the Guardian Shield. But no charge lots. herO actually pumped out charge before he did this attack and is now using the charge lots on the main attack, not just in the main, which has finally been cleaned up. And the charge lots might just be the ticket in here. No shield battery to help out Nightmare any longer. I actually really like the Adept response. herO not able to really push that. I thought the charge lots might do a little bit more, but I kind of like the Adepts coming in. Like, his Zealots won't have charge, right? So they'll just be worse Zealots. They might still help to tank a little bit, but they'd be worse. But you know what tanks well and already, like, doesn't really need the charge upgrade? It's just different. Adepts. Adepts are still kind of tanky. They have the range, too, so I guess they kind of are a little bit easier to manage, I guess. And they do attack the Zealots fairly well. You don't usually see Adepts versus Charge Lots, but it's kind of a thing, I suppose. Point is, I like that as an emergency response. Emergency. But I don't know it's actually something you want to be doing the entire time. Ideally, Nightmare also had some of his own Charge Lots. Once again, an aggressive blink forward from herO. His middle name is actually herO Aggressive Blink Forward Toss. And I don't know if that was a good idea. Charge Lots once again trying to come in to actually win the battle. That's a nice concave of Stalkers, though, for Nightmare. And he does not have a shield battery yet again, but he does have the numbers. herO definitely biting off more than he could actually chew. And this is all while Nightmare took a 4th base, by the way. Yeah, herO definitely not winning this one. GG. Nightmare takes game number 1. Just survives the onslaught. I mean, even right now, this is actually still a very testy battle. The supplies were even, just until that stalker died, I guess. But, good concave. Oh yeah, Charge Lots adding to the army supply, but not really adding to the battle. Especially when it gets to lower numbers, actually. So this is where Charge Lots can be a problem for sure. Charge Lots, if they're... I mean, they really do depend on the circumstances. The Charge Lots here against the Stalkers that couldn't micro, pretty good. And also the Stalkers of herO were in a similar supply. So they were just, you know, Zealots were tanking and the Zealots, Stalkers are doing damage. Here, the Stalkers were not in similar supply, so it was really just about the Immortal trying to kill everything and the Charge Lots coming in. But the Charge Lots in numbers of like 4 or 5 against someone who already has a concave, like the Stalkers can easily micro against that. But again, just 10 seconds earlier, and the supplies were dead even. So, herO's blinks they basically make sense, right? They might turn sour, but you can always see what herO was thinking when he aggressively blinks forward. It just, in this particular battle, did not end up favoring him. All right. Nightmare, now a game away from moving on. In the top right, he is herO. And he is about to be knocked out of the GSL by this guy, Nightmare, who already defeated him once in this group. Nightmare 2-0'd herO to begin the group. And, again, that was a pretty convincing 2-0. That last game, I would say, had more back and forth than the previous PvP these two played. Yeah. Game 1 between these two, the very first game between these two, I can't quite remember, but I know game 2 between these two was very Nightmare favored pretty quickly. That one, right up until the end, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. But even supplies, even army supplies, when you're walking into Defender's Advantage, the shield batteries that you have to take out, the probe pulls you might have to deal with, and the concave that Nightmare Stalkers had found themselves in, you know, all mean that the equal army supply is, you know, not equal. And then behind that, herO had not gotten a 4th base, so he was a bit dedicated. Hadn't gotten a 4th base and had just lost all those probes to the Adepts. So yeah, he's in a tough spot. Definitely, at some point, you know, really forced to all in with that, right? Do or die right then and there. Well, in this game, we do have just typical high ground, 2 gateways. We had herO try and play something a little bit different last time on Royal Blood. Not this time. And Nightmare, well, probably wiggling his seat a little bit, you know? He's getting the wiggly jigglies. He's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win. But remains to be seen. At this point, even though Nightmare has less clout than a lot of the other Korean players in GSL, he does not have that much less experience than them. You know, if we're talking about the entire history of StarCraft 2, maybe Nightmare's been playing for 9 years, and herO's been playing for, well... Actually, that's a pretty bad example. In terms of these particular two, herO definitely has more experience being a pro gamer. But my point was, Nightmare is at least like 8 years in or something like that to being a pro, maybe like 6 as far as like some good results, I guess. He should not get ahead of himself. And I don't think he will. I don't think I've seen Nightmare be too, not overconfident necessarily, but I haven't seen him be too, man, what word am I looking for? Too ahead of himself, you know? Thinking, this is gonna be easy. I'm gonna win, no problem. I got this in the bag. Like, overconfidence is what I'm explaining, but it's not quite that. I don't think I've seen him get, like, unjustly aggressive. Whereas herO would very much be the type of player, even as a very well-established pro in both StarCraft 2 and Brood War. I could absolutely see him getting wiggly jiggly in his seat and getting a little overeager to actually kill the guy. Nightmare does have a proxy pylon, but that's a very it's audacious proxy pylon. Ooh, Stalkers were looking to find that Oracle. But herO, I guess, knew that his Oracle was scouted by the pylon and the probe, so he figured that the Stalkers would be waiting for him, so he kind of moved it off to the left side. The Oracle will not die in transit, which is very, very important, and herO's second Oracle will soon join in, so one shield battery will no longer defend against the Oracles. Not that Nightmare has one. Nightmare so far just building nothing but Stalkers, first of all, so he has a decent number of army units. He could actually, you know, in a different circumstance, try to be a little aggressive with them, but with the Oracles breathing down his neck, he cannot do that. So he's just going to place his Stalkers at his natural and his main. This means that he has absolutely zero map control, so he doesn't actually know what his opponent's doing, because he also has zero scouting. So that's always a bit concerning, but you know the Oracles have taken up time and resources. It's not like they're diving over into 6 gateways and charge anytime soon. Decent defense on the Adept and the Natural, but overall 5 probes still go down. I think herO's pretty happy with that. Blink's on the way for Nightmare, but pretty much the same exact time as herO, who again got 2 Oracles on a Stargate all before this happened. And that would just go down to the amount of Stalkers that have been warped in. So that's literally the, one of the more important things, or not more important things, but sometimes something that get lost in the explanations of PvPs, right? Perhaps because we know that the Zerg production tab either has drones or army. And the Terran production tab has both of those at all times, basically. The Protoss really has a choice, almost like a Zerg player, but instead of building probes, bajillion probes, they really are just investing into technology. But that, I think, is really just explaining the big difference here. And herO, it just looks like he has a better build at this point, right? Like, his Oracles require attention from Nightmare, so it's not like he can't not make units, but you don't need to make a bunch of Stalkers to deal with only 2 Oracles. 2 Stalkers in each mineral line does the trick, right? Well, maybe you want 1 or 2 more in each mineral line, just to ensure the Oracles don't zip-zap before you can react. Okay. Does that mean you get 11? Or 9? Just 30 seconds ago? That's a lot. That's a lot of Stalkers doing basically nothing. The Oracles did something by making Nightmare make units that did nothing. And so herO also manages to grab the similar timed Blink, and still has the Oracles to cast Revelation, Scout, Harass, Stasis Trap. And he also has the Stalkers. And he also has the Economy. And everything combines together to make it look like a much better game for herO. Much better. Nightmare is going to probably be able to hold in the natural. Reinforcements, Guardian Shield. Yeah, that's going to be good enough. But here, Nightmare must know that behind this, there could be a third Nexus building for herO. We saw herO try to target fire a weakened Stalker. He didn't have enough firepower, especially with the Guardian Shield. But it looks like he is still with the reinforcements, winning this particular tug of war. Nightmare now out of juice on the sentries as well. No shield battery on the natural, much less the third base, which still has not been planted down. herO did add on his third Nexus, but only just now. So not the biggest gap in Nexus timing if Nightmare was going for a Nexus. However, Nightmare retreats, thinks he's going to be under too much pressure, doesn't have any scouting on this side of the map. Again, one of those things that's really a big issue. The Observer just only now goes across, so had he somehow seen the Stalker moving away completely and the third Nexus being slapped down, Nightmare probably gets his at almost the exact same time. As it is, 20, 30-second difference, I suppose not the worst, but he has also been working with a probe deficit this entire time, I believe, so yeah. herO is... it's not it's not astounding, but definitely favorable for herO here. As he also starts up the +1 and charge, he will have superior technology. Nightmare still doesn't even have a forge. 18 Stalkers, 16. Don't think herO can make a move on this Nexus. I love the hallucinated immortal. This is a distraction. Adepts got into the natural, but Nightmare actually had Stalkers over there, so quick and easy defense. And Nightmare certainly on his road to recovery, but he still needs more probes. Now he's down 9 probes as herO's Nexus finishes, so this 30-second difference of the Nexus timing is actually huge in terms of saturation. Nightmare was not building that many extra probes to temporarily oversaturate his natural, to then saturate his third. He actually just stopped at 44. Okay, now he's building them again. But the point is, now it's a 15 worker gap. That just suddenly exploded. And herO is not risking anything to do this as well. He's getting all the probes, all the upgrades, all the production, a 4th Nexus at the gold base, because of course he does. And there's no punish. Nightmare is in no position to do anything. He's gonna go for Resident Glaives. Now, I was gonna bring this up, but obviously the game ended, so I didn't really have time to. But I brought up the Adepts versus Charge Lot dynamic in the last game. I loved the emergency defense Adepts. I thought they were quite a neat idea. And I have seen more PvPs where this Resident Glaives mid-game composition as tried to be made. Like, it's... I don't actually think I've seen it work yet. I don't think I have. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. It used to be 6 years ago, like Legacy of the Void beginnings, that Adept versus Adept was very popular. But now we're in an extremely different situation. And then we had our fair share of 2-base Adept all-ins. I remember those. But then we just basically did away with the Adept Resident Glaives entirely in PvP. And now it's kind of coming back, but I'm still not exactly sure why, honestly. You know, the power of the 2-base Adept attack was that your opponent was also on 2 bases, limited in their supply, limited in their technology options, and while they could defend their shared choke very well, Adepts, you know, made that complicated, so they could rush past the force field in the natural, rush past the force field on the main base, so on and so forth. But when you get up to 3, 4, 5 base PvP, I mean, first of all, the chances of them scouting their intent, like you doing this, is higher. Although, you know, you are trying to hide it for as long as possible. Hope they never see the Adept numbers rising. And then second of all, even if they don't scout it, it is very likely that they are on their way to Archons. And Archons are pretty good against Adepts, just like they're good against Charge Lots. Oh, some nasty grabs there with the force field. It's nicely done by Nightmare. But again, Adepts might be able to shade past this 3rd base, but they're never going to shade into the natural or the main. Something that's more important. So I'm just bringing up all these things as to why they're not particularly good at killing blows. But what we're seeing in action right now, that herO is displaying to us right now, is that the Charge Lots really don't want to run into them. So the Charge Lots are trying to wait until the real trigger had been pulled. Now finally the trigger is pulled, the Charge Lots come in as well, and the Charge Lots doing their job trying to take out the Immortals. The Immortals temporarily focus firing on the Stalkers, but you can see that they're now wasting shots on Zealots, and the Adepts are mostly all gone. The War Prism is still intact for Nightmare, but his supply is absolutely not. He was also working against a +2 army. I mean, it's actually kind of impressive how close it ended up being, but remember that herO was not only on 4 bases, he's on 5. So herO was maybe also being a bit greedy. At the end of the day, herO is going to hold. And perhaps he would have held even better had he been able to spend his minerals or had more gas. Either one, right? He has a bit of an imbalance going on. And he does defend, and Nightmare's in a lot of trouble. 3 bases versus a 5-base Protoss. Like, what the hell? And herO is looking to end the game as he comes across the map. Maybe not the largest army to counterattack with, but Nightmare does not have much of an army at all. So this will be game for 2 wrapped up with herO taking a pretty substantial lead. Well, he took a lead, and then a lead, and then a lead, and they became substantial. And Nightmare really did have that only one attack to try and win this game. So, of course, he should have done it. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot more potential in these adept compositions than I'm currently witnessing. But, yeah, I think the hope for that attack was already very low considering the rest of the game. GG's. And now it all comes down to this. Who will join Byun to move on to the round of 8? In the bottom left of altitude, you have herO. In the top right, it is Nightmare. herO trying to prove that he's not in a slump, that his best days are not behind him. And for Nightmare, he's been trying to prove, and is still trying to prove, that he can run with the best of them. Get to the later stages of tournaments, defeat bigger players more consistently, and perhaps be at another Protoss hope in a land of very few Protoss hopes. The round of 8 portions of tournaments. Oh, you know, before that, like round of 16, round of 32, like forget about it. So many Protoss, but round of 8 you get a little sparse. But I guess with the good news about PvP being the decider match, guaranteed there will be a Protoss in the round of 8. Yeah. Classic tried his best in Group A, but tough draw. So this is altitude, and this is a map with natural ramps, so both players are going to take advantage of it, go for the low ground gateway. If this is actually true, then both of them will be trying to block each other's nexus. Whoever fails the entire game. I mean, honestly, that is actually what happens. If, let's for instance, say herO's cat jumps on top of his keyboard, and then his probe moves away from the nexus to stop blocking it. Nightmare gets a nexus after gateway, pre-7 X score. What does herO do at that point? Nothing, that's what. Which we don't see very often, but I believe we've seen it actually very recently. A PvP where we had to double take because we were just conversing, and then we realized that the 1 gate expands nexus was like a minute faster than the others, and we're like, it's because someone didn't block the nexus. But assuming everything goes according to plan, this is exactly the circumstance that happens. Then you go into a Stargate, because no other option, and then you make one a Phoenix, and Phoenix. I have no idea who'd be better in Phoenix versus Phoenix. You do not see that very often in PvP in Korea. You don't see it very often in general. So if there's 100 PvPs across all the regions, how many times do you see Phoenix versus Phoenix? 10? 10 of those games, maybe? I guess, depending on whether or not, you know, how many maps had the natural ramp, I suppose. But then, in terms of how many of those 10 games are played on Korea, 1, 2. The other 8 are max packs. And he wins them all. So, I would not expect it to be a Phoenix versus Phoenix, and it definitely isn't. Nightmare never went for a Stargate, which is actually kind of weird. Nightmare went for 2 Stalkers instead of a Stargate. I was like, how is he missing an entire production facility? Like, what's... And again, it's because he made units. And, that might sound a bit absurd, like, without context. Like, oh, a guy made units on an RTS? Ugh. But seriously, like, are these units actually worth it? A simple shield battery is a much better tool than the actual 2 Stalkers themselves, which are coming across the entire map. Now, if there wasn't a shield battery, this is a surprise. This actually is weirdly snowbally, and things happen. But a shield battery was 100 minerals after the Stargate fact. Nightmare now has 2 Stalkers, but going on to 3 and actually 4, that have nothing. They have nothing. Even his Twilight Council was further delayed by that 3rd Stalker, I believe. So, like, I don't know. You know, I already misjudged herO. I miscalled herO's kind of weirder build in Game 2 of RagnaroK, which ended in disaster. But I learned it actually did make sense as far as scouting-wise. So, okay. But Nightmare's insistence on building units in PvP, again, a weird sentence out of context. But in the context of the last game and this game, it really seems to be hurting him. And what's also weird is that it's like, well, you can't tell an aggressive guy not to make units. You might as well tell a cow not to moo. Well, herO's an aggressive Protoss, and he's not making very many units. He seems actually calmer in this PvP than the original best of 3, and I don't remember enough details about the original one to just like on the fly, start comparing the two. But Nightmare basically like grabbed herO's ear in the first 2 games today, and like just pulled him around for the most part. And herO just had to follow suit. But this time around, it's like Nightmare is almost pulling his own ear. And herO is just watching him and is like, what are you doing? Because herO in the last 2 games, at least, has just been playing, again, a smoother PvP. One in which, you know, you blink, you walk away for 2-3 minutes or whatever, and then you come back and you're like, wait, herO's ahead by 70 supply? Like, what the hell happened? And it's not disruptors popping off, it's just that herO had a smoother build that eventually snowballed like the last game did. And I might be getting ahead of myself because not much has happened in this game. So like calm down a second, but I don't know, man. herO's third base is faster. He's up 1 probe, not a big difference, but his third base is definitely much faster once again. His blink is similar time to the person who only went for a Twilight Council. So herO has blink at the same time, and he has an Oracle, 2 Oracles to help him out. And Nightmare's higher stalker count is not helpful right now. It probably could be. He's got 13 stalkers to 5. If he moved across the map right now, he actually maybe could do some damage to the third Nexus, but he's not doing it, and herO is going to start warping in consistently. He's already got all of his technology, and well, he's getting his production as well, but he's got his technology down. He's just waiting for it to finish up. Yeah, Nightmare, you know, he's also getting a Robo, which, I mean, that's an okay timing for a Robo, but actually, ideally, I would say you even wait till after your third Nexus. So, he's even playing a little bit cautious. Shield batteries aplenty. One of the main, of course, are the Oracles, but then 2 on the third base, because it seems like he's afraid of herO. And herO's not the one that is actually intimidating, or supposed to be intimidating. Not yet. Eventually his advantages will all kick in and he will have a surplus of supply, and that'll be great. But it's really... Nightmare played the first series as if he knew exactly what herO was going to do and had a lot of answers for it. He's playing the second series, well, the second and third games specifically, I should say, as if he's facing him for the first time. It's really odd. But Nightmare definitely is behind once again. That drastic difference about to show here is 10 worker lead now for herO. He's getting into the charge where Nightmare is not. Nightmare is finally moving out in the field with his higher army supply. But again, moving into the defender's advantage, even if it was a disadvantaged army supply for herO, you'd have the shield battery, the overcharge, the probe pull to fall back on. And it's probably going to be even because herO now has time to warp in. And herO has been scouting. He sees the third Nexus. I guess hasn't scouted for a little while. He sees maybe a lack of gas. I'm wondering if he figures that he's about to be attacked or not is what I'm trying to figure out. Not sure, but I think he also feels pretty confident. Nightmare, again, almost like overly defensive. Then decided he was going to attack out of Warp Prism, move out on the map, then didn't do anything at all. Now, when he does move across the map as this hallucination, now confirms a couple of different things, I guess. The Warp Prism was made. An attack was probably imminent, but then Nightmare didn't do it. And then he sees the gases, which means that Nightmare is moving on from whatever attack he was planning. But that means that he, again, is like... He's faltering in his steps, where herO is just simply walking. Almost carefree. Like, tripping up there, buddy? Like, you okay? You good? He's got his +2 on the way, he's got his Archons, he's got Charge, he's got his economy still superior to his opponent, although the 4th Nexus are a little more similar timed. Nightmare is playing catch-up. After playing almost what looked like a bit of a puzzle game, like it just didn't seem like he really knew exactly what was happening what herO was doing or what he wanted to do. It was all a little lacking in confidence, I guess. So herO should be very comfortable in this game. He's probably going to hit with +2, which is a very classic Protoss attack timing. Or just move out now, like whatever. Whatever you want to do. herO does what he wants. And it really is no reason to wait for +2, actually. So as much as that is usually a typical timing, it doesn't matter. He has the army to aggress. I don't think he can actually pull the trigger, but he can start positioning. He can hopefully draw Nightmare into a bad fight. He can distract him, maybe hit on the right side or left side, rather. Does he just chase the traps, actually? But herO does have control over the game. He's going to go into robotics bay afterwards, so whether or not he actually does damage with this positioning is almost irrelevant. He either does, and it's great, or he doesn't, and he has disruptors following up, which means that he's now bowling for strikes from the high grounds to Nightmare's very much limited mobility army. So Stalkers can blink away and skedaddle, but they can't exactly blink all the way around this little tiny base, can they? So at the very least, Nightmare would forfeit his 4th base once these disruptors pop up. And Nightmare really needs to be afraid of that, but he needs to be afraid of a lot of things. He needs to be afraid of the approaching army just as is. Charge lots, Archons, and Stalkers, oh my. He also has to be wary of whatever follow-up there is, such as, well, very typically disruptors. And if disruptors are pinning you at home, you're probably in the worst possible position. Now, if you have your own disruptors, it's a bit more fair game. They might be pinning you at home, but then they can't really engage into you to really end the game. And so Nightmare is finally going to get to his own disruptors, and for his sake, hopefully in time. But herO is also still willing to engage army to army. +2 is done. 20 army supply lead for the blue Protoss. Guardian Shield activated. It is still going down a choke into a shield body overcharge. And it looks like herO thought about it, but is deciding that he doesn't necessarily need to do it. Nope, he's going to go ahead for it. Zealot, at the very least, will kill a lot of probes. Oh, disruptors did appear. That's why he went for it. And they did hit some of the army. Immortal now very much weakened. Another disruptor, right? Oh, not in the heart of the army, but that blink forward is going to cost Nightmare tons. He blinked forward to kill the disruptor, but then put his Stalkers in range of the Charge Lots and the Archons. So no matter how you slice it, that was just not going to be a good situation for Nightmare. Finally has his own disruptors, goes after a single Archon, doesn't even get the kill with the second one. Second one whiffs, and herO still has that 20 army supply lead on the disruptor shot, actually killing some of both of their armies. But at the end of the day, it looks like herO just has the numbers. Shield battery is going to be deactivated. No, it's actually activated. It's fine, but it's not helping. It just isn't actually doing very much. It could also be target fired or deactivated, either one, but herO just has the numbers, so why even try, right? Disruptors of Nightmare looking to save the day. Grab 2 of herO's disruptors and a miss rally on herO as well. I mean, those were a couple of last-second mistakes, but after, really, the damage had already been done, that was also a second War Prism? So herO can continue the aggression. Like, he's completely fine to continue on. This War Prism a little vulnerable, but not going to get targeted, because what happens when Nightmare blinks forward? herO jumps on him. So Nightmare still playing catch-up now without a 4th Nexus as herO grabs a 5th. 2 disruptors at a time for both of them, but disruptors are great comeback units, man. They really are. Nightmare is 6, about to be on 8. No, they just popped out. So he's on 4, he's about to be on 6, he is on 6. That's a good number. 8's a little better, but 6 is good. Oh, and he got a couple of zealots, actually. But 6 is a good number. You have to have... I mean, really a lot of things still happen, though, right? You have to either hope that the disruptors get big shots, like 20 supply every shot, almost. Or you have to hope that the disruptors are never out of ammo. Because one wins you the fights, the other one, you know, stalls the fights. And Nightmare could do with either one, you know? If he has to settle for stalling the fight, then so be it. Oh, from behind! Oh, Nightmare! Oh, that was actually a really good shot. That was like 20 supply, man. The Stalker's looking for the natural run by, completely punished by a couple of surprise disruptors from the north, and Nightmare is doing all of this while actually reestablishing his fourth base. Over halfway done. herO now realizing that might be happening, sends the Zealots in. They've been kind of foretold though, right? Like he tried this earlier and it was seen. Another misrally from herO on the disruptors. Some real clumsy play here from herO. Maybe thinking, well, actually, you know, I brought this up. I brought this up in game 2. After Nightmare won game 1, I said, I don't really think this Nightmare is someone who gets overconfident and looks to kill the guy too eagerly. herO would be the guy to get overconfident and try to kill the guy. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that here. Oh, shit! Those are good disruptor shots! Nightmare! Even though he is the one without map control, I guess this Observer is actually really freaking helping, man. That Observer is actually a gold mine, holy shit. Yeah, no, he should not have as much vision as he does. Disruptors, oh, gonna get a shot, okay. herO gets 1 in return, but Nightmare's gotten like 5 great shots. And herO's trying to just out-position the Disruptors, which is usually a great move, right? 6 Disruptors, you can't really split them because they can get overwhelmed. So then what does the other guy do? Split their army. But this is not enough army from herO to actually overwhelm and distract and get into all the nooks and crannies. Nightmare is even able to consolidate his army together and now chase after herO. The tides have turned. Decent last second split, actually. herO still with an upgrade lead, as well as a far superior economy. I don't believe he ever got a Dark Shrine. He could be doing a lot more in terms of harassment. Gonna try and go for a big old wraparound. He's kind of going for a surround right now, but the rest of the army cannot support the Zealots. As it tries to, it gets blasted by Nightmare's Disruptors. Oh, good lord. But more charge-outs come in from herO. herO did have a huge mineral bank, and that is saving his butt right now. Again, some really terrible battles have been happening. There's a good shot from herO finally. But for every fight that herO, for every moment that herO has done well, Nightmare has done well like 10 times over, you know? So for every 1 disruptor from herO, it feels like there's 10 from Nightmare. Nightmare is playing a better disruptor late game. It's just that herO was so freaking far ahead, it has not made up for that yet. I just like, you can look at it 2 ways, like just how far ahead herO was, or just how much herO has thrown away his army. Like, both are negatives. Both are not good here. Well, I guess he got ahead in the first place. That is good, I guess. Yeah. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? Shield Body Overcharge, as herO really is feeling the stress. He knows that he's in trouble. He is now the one pinned back on his bases. The Disruptors of Nightmare zoning out whatever attempt he makes to try and save his bases. His natural could even be under attack. His main base production and technology could be in danger. He tries to get another wraparound. He does find the Warp Prism. Also a couple of Disruptors. They do need to fire. Oh, that was a late blink. Straight up. Straight up late blink. Can't blame the ping on that one either, actually. They are playing offline. But now all of the Disruptors of Nightmare are finally dead and gone. herO's supply a bit in the gutter, but here comes the surround. herO actually losing so many probes in this battle, but he's on 6 bases. He can replace probes. He was also on like 80 plus probes to begin with, so he absolutely could pull the probes in an emergency. And herO now desperately needs to spend his money. His production has been stalled out. His Disruptor is now looking to save his life, as they did for Nightmare. Nightmare actually stopped making Disruptors altogether. It's now pure Stalker. Nothing but mobility here. The worker count has evened up. The upgrades have not. So when herO does take a straight fight, he has that advantage, but he doesn't have the numbers, so he really does need the Disruptors, which are now all dead. Archon comes in to help out and does help out a little bit. The Zealots, more importantly, coming in a good number, and that is going to be the issue. Can herO match the numbers? Can he match the Stalker numbers of his opponent, or can he get the Zealot count that can deal with the Stalker count of his opponent? Because 6 Zealots adding into a big fight like this might not matter very much, as the Stalkers simply attack, blink away, micro, walk away, whatever it is. But add in 12 Zealots, and now you got something cooking. Now you got a real composition. And herO is trying to make sure that the Zealots are always coming in from some type of back attack, which is nice of him. Aggressive blink forward as he realizes he has some momentum right now. Again, his upgrades also still in effect for these straight-up non-disruptor battles. Both of them actually moving away from disruptors. And both of them doing it for a very similar reason, I believe, which is that time is of the essence. Nightmare is still almost basically all in on 4 bases. Long-distance mining on his 5th for some reason. Oh, I guess he doesn't have enough for Nexus anyways. And then for herO, he knew that if he had just lived, if he could just live, he would be fine. He has so many bases, he's replaced his probe count, he has the upgrade lead, and if he got some breathing room, he could go back and disruptors himself. But for all of the action that happened, there was no time to get into disruptors. Now, everyone can breathe. And it's Nightmare who invests his very limited income into 2 more disruptors and 2 more Archons. I think he's finally saving up for a 5th base. It's herO who chooses still to not go into disruptors. He's like, you know what, disruptors suck. I don't know why people like them. I keep losing with them. They must suck. It's the race that's imbalanced. Not that I'm bad. No, but seriously, like for herO, he really has not had any success with his own disruptors or against his opponents. God darn, Nightmare. And he's thinking also probably that my income should suffice. I should be able to overwhelm this guy. Which, you know, is not wrong, but it's something he tried earlier. And it didn't work. So maybe second time's the charm. I don't know about that. He comes in. Actually, a very awkward disruptor fight right there. Disruptors don't want to help Zealots. You know, that's not how it works. They want to be on the right side helping against the Stalkers and the Immortals of herO. At the end of the battle, 2 battles really, it looks like actually the Nightmare manages to keep ahead on the supply. I think a lot of the Zealots are just simply dying without really being a worthwhile investment. You know, like they're not really getting the huge wraparound, the huge surround. They're not in overwhelming numbers that's Nightmare cannot tackle. They kind of come and do their job to a degree, they die. Or they come in from different angles and kind of get caught up on something and then they die. But, you know, when they are warped in, they really make herO's supply look really good. But then it just like dissipates. The Zealots just gets killed across like a couple different battles. I'm trying to always be like looking for disruptors on like the left and right now because Nightmare has been so good about sending disruptors behind enemy lines. This is the most I've ever focused on a minimap. But no, it's actually Nightmare who loses his disruptor. I mean, I brought it up, and I'll remind everyone that there was an observer right here that really did contribute heavily to Nightmare's defense and comeback, because he certainly has made a comeback. With that gone, and with vision mostly gone, or now being fought over correctly, herO kind of gave him that vision. Did not do anything about it, and now he is. Now there's a battle for vision. This should be easier for herO and harder for the disruptor player, right? This is more of an attack than actually the Zealots let on. And in fact, more Zealots, in fact. Like, this actually... You know what's so odd? Nightmare didn't realize how much of the army was moving up to the left side. He was chasing this Zealot group and thinking that he had left enough army on this base to defend. And when a bunch of Zealots trickled in, he thought, yeah, I'm fine. And then more army trickled in, and then more army trickled in, and then it caught his disruptors. That was actually kind of a perfect sequence of events for herO to ensure victory on this base. Would he have done so anyways? Probably. Eventually, Nightmare had to crack. That's why I kind of laughed right there. It's like, first the Zealots, no problem. Then a couple of Stalkers, a bit of an issue. My disruptors are almost here. Oh shit, there's Zealots there as well. And then he was dead. And Nightmare put up one hell of a fight. 22 minutes when he was basically dead at like minute 15. There was a 60 supply difference at least at one point. Right? That's pretty cray. Like, and again, you could either say that herO... You could say that herO threw to a certain degree, or you could applaud herO's ability to get as far as ahead as he did. Either one. Because he definitely needed to be that far ahead to actually win this game. He was very close to being killed when he was defending right here. Very close to losing the game. That means the kind of expected winners do make it out of GSL Group B. herO and Byun advance. But it was definitely a tough group. Nightmare and RagnaroK both certainly had a good shot to win this group, but I try again in the season 3. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry for the slightly suboptimal casting. I'm still a little sick. My throat's a little raw and my nose is a little stuffed up, so I certainly haven't been able to draw on as big of breaths as I would like to keep on going. So there's been some accommodations made for being sick, but I wanted to cast this group since I didn't do it on Thursday because I was actually very sick on Thursday. So, yeah. Anyways, thanks, guys. And I will see you all later for the YouTube peeps. Bye-bye.